Chapter 002. Young Master, is this really true? I mean, a letter brought by a bird. Not long ago, Anson, who had been sitting in a daze by the manor lake, suddenly saw a red bird fall to his side, with a letter in his mouth, a letter with a special clay. The red bird tilted his head to watch Anson open the letter and cooed. Anson couldn't understand it. But when Anson saw the content of the letter, he was shocked. The front foot just determined that this belongs to Marvel. The back foot received an offer of admission from Hogwarts. Is there anything more outrageous than that? Hogwarts School. Principals, Albus, Dumbledore, Sir Merlin First Class Medal, Chief Wizard Voyan Sengamot, President of the International Federation of Wizards. Dear Mr. Pendra, we are pleased to inform you that you have been approved to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and a list of books and items required is attached. The school starts on September 1st. We will wait for your owl's reply before July 31st. Your loyalty. Vice Principals, Minerva, McGonagall. At the back is a list of items needed for admission. Anson opened his mouth, but wrote back to Redbird, and then found a scene that surprised him even more. As soon as the Redbird flew up, it disappeared as if it had entered another space and didn't see it flying. It just disappeared. Could it be that this is not a place with Marvel? But for him, it's an opportunity. The Marvel world is not safe, no matter how you look at it. The tide of the times will not take care of you because of how much money you have. The general trend is that you can do nothing but change yourself. Mr. Spencer, do you remember where Pendra came from? Spencer was lost in thought, but he had not believed this statement before. But when Anson received a notice from some magic school, he seemed to think that it all made sense. The Pendra family descends from the ancient King Arthur, and legend has it that King Arthur had an Archmage Merlin by his side. As the core item of the Pendra family, the sword in the stone became a ring on Anson's finger. At this time, all kinds of incredible things are saying one thing. Perhaps, there are still things in this world that you don't know. Even if he used all the power of the Pendra family to collect about the so-called Hogwarts, he did not gain the slightest. When Anson received the notice about Hogwarts, he himself had a feeling. It seems that he can go to that world whenever he wants. Yes, it's the world. And the way is the ring in the hand, or the sword of the king that turns into a ring. A feeling that is out of place with Marvel. And today he specially dressed up, a decent little suit, and his hand was rubbing the family ring. Mr. Spencer, are you ready? Yes, young master, we can go on an adventure. Spencer carried 2 pistols in his arms and carried a suitcase, which contained a lot of gold. According to Anson's orders. Hell, do so-called wizards trade with gold? What a luxury. And lag. Spencer belongs to the Special Air Service Regiment soldiers, and is one of the best, and he is naturally no stranger to gun operation. Anson once jokingly called Spencer his own Alfred. However, he prefers to think of Spencer as his own. Loyal and reliable, the Spencer family has always served the Pendra family, and the pro can no longer be close. The two stood in the secret room of Pendra Manor, and Anson took a breath and touched the feeling deep in his heart. The next second, the two seemed to be twisted and pulled into a point, and disappeared directly. Meanwhile, far under the eastern Himalayas, Karmataj, a bald guy, had originally raised the BT to drink, but paused. Strange, it seems like a spatial fluctuation, but it doesn't look like it. Shaking his head, he thought he was misperceived. Is this another world? Mr. Spencer, I'm afraid we don't have time to sigh. Yes, young master. Not long after, Spencer kindly brought back a newspaper with a firearm and found that the world was nearly 17 years worse than the Marvel world. Marvel is already at the beginning of 08, but the world is still 91. Time is not the same. So, young master, what should we do now? Anson thought for a moment. Maybe we should find a place to stay first. How about buying a house? Spencer nodded. In this way, we may need a reasonable identity, as well as a bank. Yes, through there. Bank notability. At this time, Britain was unwilling to fall into the third world because of the twilight of this big ship, and chaos was inevitable. The identity of buying and selling has reached the point where there is no need to hide it. Reasonably get the identity, go to the bank to exchange some of the world's paper money. Their first day is considered to be over. Spencer, young master. Wizard? Anson said it directly. Yes, young master. Does this really exist? I mean it. It's incredible. When he was old, he still had that expression on his face even now. Astound. This shocked his worldview, and his perception of the world and the universe seemed to be denied at once. Mr. Spencer, existence is reasonable, and it always has a reason, doesn't it? Yes, it's just that I don't know if it's a good thing for us. He looked up at Anson. In fact, he hopes that the young master will be an ordinary person. In this way, at least a lifetime can be safely lived. A long life is very long, and it is also very short, but it must be completed first to calculate its length. Next, jingle bells. Jingle bells. The doorbell rang. Spencer was still wondering who would come to the door. After all, it had only been a day since they bought the house and picked up the pistol and loaded it. Hello, is it Mr. Anson, Mr. Pendra's house? I'm a professor from Hogwarts, and I'm in charge of leading you through the purchase of entrance items. The two stood behind the door in amazement. Too fast and too accurate. After seeing Anson nod, Spencer hid the gun behind him and opened the door with his other hand. He laughed when the people outside came into Anson's eyes. It's not bad. After giving Spencer a safe look, he smiled at the professor standing outside the door. So, I'm Anson, are you? Minerva McGonagall. You can call me Professor McGonagall. Mr. Pendra, smiling, gentleman, decent, simply a natural lion cub. He will definitely enter Gryffindor. Welcome, Professor McGonagall. Please come in. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Pendra, but I think we can go and purchase the things you need for admission first. The time is very rushed, and I still have a few little wizards to guide. That's a shame. Chapter 003. 3 more. It's a pity indeed. After all, this is an opportunity to directly inquire about the information of the wizarding world. But there will be a chance. The wizarding world of Harry Potter is seen as a derivative of children's books, and it would be outrageous if you really want to believe it. Power has never been something that children can play with. It has always been a means and game for hegemons. It is a rule that makes the weak submit, makes the strong flock to it, and gives you benefits, and hope is a poison. Anson admits that he is addicted to it. The strong sense of unease in the Marvel world seems to be released at this moment, and he finally has the power to protect himself. Protect the people he wants to protect. Diagon Alley. It's Professor McGonagall, starting the new year again? Time flies so fast. Yes, Tom. Old Tom asked McGonagall kindly. Professor McGonagall wants something? Butterbeer? Thank you, Tom, but it's a rush today. McGonagall gave an apologetic smile and led Anson and Spencer to the side corner and took out a wooden branch in a strange shape. Spencer's unique experience made him first perceive a weapon. Very strange feeling. Remember here, count 3 pieces on the trash can. Count 2 pieces horizontally, and then wander little. The clicking sound suddenly came from the brick wall, and the brick wall seemed to come to life and squirmed around, slowly, revealing a portal. It's amazing. McGonagall withdrew her wand and smiled. Then, welcome to Diagon Alley. Welcome to their world of magic. Now what are we going to do? Spencer said. Anson suddenly spoke. Gringotts. McGonagall paused. It seems that Mr. Pendra knows the wizarding world very well. I thought the Pendra family is technically also a wizarding world, but we have been gone for a long time. McGonagall down. The Pendras? There didn't seem to be much information about it in her memory. Maybe which family disappeared in the wizarding world. Didn't think much about it. Anson laughed. If the records in the family were true, then Merlin in this world might be like Spencer, serving the Pendra family. He was looking forward to it even more. There are many people in Diagon Alley because of the admission of new students, different from outside, wearing various robes and leading their parents to shop for things. Various shops are shouting, Wizarding World, here he comes. Gringotts. He didn't believe the words outside. Gringotts, and if the goblins were really so powerful, I was afraid that they would not be defeated by human wizards. Some were even cursed to become human slaves. Simply outrageous. Born to unleash magic, born to have an advantage over humans, but they lose. Why? It is nothing more than a gap in the use of tools and quantity. Thus, in Anson's heart, goblins have become a group of very qualified tools, and if they obtain this power to the Marvel world, they may be very good subordinates. Oh, Professor McGonagall, is this a new student? Yes. Please help him handle it. The goblin sitting on the stage looked down at Anson, and the scrutiny made him very disliked. Name? Anson Pendra. As if thinking of something, Anson repeated again, Anson Pendragon. Pendragon? The goblins let out a scream, and the wizards and goblins of Gringotts all looked over. Pendragon? Is that the Pendragon? The goblin was keenly aware of something. Merlin's smelly socks. What's wrong today? The goblin got up and crouched on the desk, his eyes threatening him even more. Little wizard, are you sure your name is this one? Of course. I'm sure I've repeated it twice, sir. The goblin looked deeply, immediately returned to a smile. Respected Mr. Pendra, please follow me. I will personally serve you. Gringotts has not seen the descendants of Pendra appear for too long. It's been too long, muttered. Anson sneered. The face changes so quickly. Aren't we going to exchange money? Where to go? You may not know that the Pendra family has always had a vault at Gringotts Treasury. Anson was looking forward to it even more. Professor McGonagall didn't figure out why these goblins changed so much and exaggeratedly. Pendragon, King Arthur, Merlin's launch. Is this true? However, Professor McGonagall left after telling him what to do, perhaps to find Dumbledore, because he still had a little wizard to be introduced. Who knows? And the black-haired Anson, led by the leprechaun, rode directly into the ground with something like a backward minor cart and did not know how deep. After being drenched by the Cool Thief waterfall, my mood was even worse. Not elegant at all. Vault 13. The corners of Spencer's mouth tugged. What an auspicious number. The goblin carried a magic lamp and motioned for Anson to step forward. What should I do? The vault of the Pendra family requires special family heir blood to open, and even goblins cannot open this door. So, drip your blood to verify that you are a descendant of the Pendra family. With a snicker. Here, I'm afraid there is a problem. But, vaguely rubbing the ring on the index finger, it should be right? The finger quickly touched on the portal on the side, and he sighed. The blood flicked up. Click. Merlin's beard. What a wonderful magic. The magic on this door is now lost. It is my honor to see it open again. The goblin's face that should have looked at Anson instantly became frightened, and he had to admire the magic on the door. Anson looked at the goblin. If I am not the descendant of Pendra, what consequences will I have? Death. Instantly lowered his head and stretched out his finger to point at the open vault. Please, Mr. Pendra, this is the vault of Pendra. The most amazing and rich vault in the wizarding world. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Take Spencer into the vault. Full of golden light. The entire vault is huge. Probably bigger than a football field. It should have been cast with the traceless extension charm. It seems that we confirmed something. Spencer has already opened his mouth. So much gold is nothing for the Pendra family, what they have in the Marvel world. This is especially true in the banks of the Pendra family. But there are also many here, which are still minted into gold coins, presumably the universal currency of this world. Moreover, the gold coins of the wizarding world can only be made by goblins, and a lot of magical materials have been added to them, which are very precious. The vault had a lot of strange things, as well as densely packed books lined up neatly on one side. It's the most valuable asset. Seeing this, Spencer said, "It's just, young master, how should we take it away?" Anson thought for a moment and raised his hand to look at the ring engraved with the family crest. After sinking down and feeling it carefully, he opened his eyes. I have a way. As soon as his mind moved, the Jingren in front of him disappeared partially. Well, a space about the size of a basketball court seems to be decided by its own magical influence. After taking a part of Jingren with him, and then loading all the books, the two left here. Without looking back, the so-called wealth does not mean much. Mr. Pendra. The goblin outside the door was as flattering as Fank AI. So, let's leave. As you wish, Mr. Pendra. His first step in the wizarding world was considered a success. Chapter 004. Compared to those countless gold gallons, the books in the vault are more precious. Knowledge is often linked to power and more important. We should go buy ones now. I'll take a look. After searching along diagonally, I finally saw a shop, Ollivander, in one corner, with a plaque on the door that said that it had been a well-made one since 382 BC. If there is a difference, it should be the word excellent. The two stood outside the door and watched. In our world, it should be called an arms dealer, right? Anson nodded. Well, it's still a monopoly-type arms dealer. Then he should be important. This time Anson shook his head instead. It was not the Ollivander family that mattered, but their method and knowledge of making wands that their family mastered were important. But that's about it. Many wizards generally use a wand to death, which is difficult to destroy, and some even pass down a wand for generations. Thanks to the love of wizards, and most of them will be damaged without fighters. Jingle bell. After pushing the door open, there was a bell ringing, and an old man appeared in front of there. Two of them, if not for Spencer's immunity to the wizarding world. I am afraid that he has already taken out his pistol and shot this man in the head. Sir, I want to buy a wand. Yes, it's a new year of enrollment, but Ollivander always has something for every wizard. Teased. After watching Anson and Spencer and not feeling humor, he took out something similar to a tape measure. Well, a magic tape measure. Sir, do I need to measure height and arm span to buy a wand? Wizards always grow up, don't they? And besides, I'm a professional. All right. Eventually, Ollivander seemed to have received some informational revelation, and walked to their side of the pile of wand boxes and pulled out a box. Try it. Trust me, the wand picks wizards and never misses it. The dragon heart tendon is used as the core of the battle, and the material of the wand is purple shirtwood, 10 inches long, which means that it is both powerful enough to control life and death, and it is also extremely arrogant and easy not to defect. Ollivander added in his heart, just like you little wizard. As soon as I took it, a breeze rose from all around. Anson knew that this was a phenomenon caused by his magic being attracted to the wand, and this wand was indeed good and suitable for him. But compared to the ring on the index finger, it is still not a little worse. However, in many cases, the ring can only be used as a backhand. I'm satisfied. How much do I have to pay? 7 galleons. The rest will be made up by Hogwarts. Well, not bad, very human. As soon as he turned his hand, he had already taken out a galleon from the ring in the palm of his hand. But who expected Ollivander to be stunned? Ancient galleon? Is there something wrong? Sir, you may not know that the ancient galleon is worth much more than the modern galleon, and in a way, the value of an ancient galleon is equivalent to that of the modern galleon. 6,677 pieces. Forehead. Now it was Anson's turn to be speechless. Well, if you calculate it this way, I'm afraid those gold gallons in the vault will be worth a lot. For example, if he wanted to, he would probably be able to buy an entire diagonally. So what to do? I don't have modern galleons in my hands. What is the name of the Sir? Pendra. How about you go to Gringotts and exchange it for me? Anson paused. It's better like this. This ancient galleon is still paid to Mr. Yuan. As for the rest, what about my tuition? I also want to learn how to make wands. and I'm interested. Oh? Ollivander looked and then at the ancient galleon in Anson's hand. There must be something abnormal about this thing being so valuable. For example, gallons are made by goblins, so the things on the ancient galleons are worth this price. Now most families no longer have ancient gallons, and even goblins can't make this method. Of course, the most important thing is that the materials of ancient gallonia are already difficult to find. If you wish, I will mail the relevant books to Sir. If you have time and questions, you can also come to me. Deal. Follow the list, by one, from crucibles to books, from gloves to pets. Oh, the pet Anson really couldn't look at it, so he bought a chubby chicken with a round face as a messenger. Magic robes, Lady Morgan Robes Specialty Store. Dink clang. Anson and Spencer stood gentlemanly and waited, and a family was fitting, just like on Ollivander's side, a magical magic tape measure. Hello, are you also a freshman this year? The little girl saw Anson and asked curiously. Hyperactivity. Curly as the chow chow, big eyes bright, protruding door teeth. He knew. I'm Hermione Granger. Reach out your little hand. Anson smiled. Anson, you can call me Anson. Yes, I am a freshman this year. Secretly tell you, it's amazing to hear that we will be enrolled with Harry Potter this year. I saw him in a piece of Hogwarts school history. Really? All right. Twitter is like an impression in memory, self-familiar, purely because of self-embarrassment relief methods. Honey, we're okay, let's go. Goodbye, Anson. Wave your hand. Spencer, young master, is there a problem? No, it's just a lament about the strength of fate. Mrs. Morgan came over. So, this little wizard who can spy on fate, whether he needs to buy a robe, believe me, here is the best. Yes ma'am, everyone says so. She was very satisfied with the little wizard's statement and was very discerning. It's just that the little wizard is too demanding. And so is the mole parent next to him. Is there a requirement to add gold trim and accessories to the wizarding robes of little wizards? Are there magic effects for wizard robes, accessories and special materials? Is there anyone who customizes a whole collection for wizarding robes? Well, she met today. It is still paid for the ancient gallon, Merlin's intestine. The big gold lord, an ancient gallon directly booked all the robes from the 1st to the 7th grade. Earned over. Decided to go to Hogsmeade Village tonight. Return to the Mole World and wait for school to start. Young master, don't you really need me to send you there? No need, Mr. Spencer, you still have a mission, don't you? Spencer nodded. He couldn't leave this world by himself, so he could only do more things in this world. For example, start an industry. For example, start an industry in the wizarding world. For the exclusive wizarding world, it is difficult to get an industry out. But if there is a golden gallon to open the way, it is still not difficult. It just takes a long time to operate. Wizards, you need to fully understand what is called the face of capital. Here's Spencer, happy to bring new joy to wizards. Platform 9 3/4. All the salutes were collected inside the ring, and here he stood alone. Eyes scanning the surroundings, people from the Ministry of Magic, and the ordinary people around them, as if they would not see people dressed strangely. Did they have a mole banishment charm? It should be more than that. Huh? It's you. I'm Hermione. Remember me? I remember you, Mom. Anson greeted her parents. Hello, Mr. Granger, Mrs. Granger. What a little gentleman, may I ask? Anson, oh, call me Pendra. Well, Mr. Pendra too. I mean there are no wizards in the house. Chapter 005. I'm afraid to disappoint Mr. Granger. I had wizards in my ancestors. The two couples suddenly realized that this should be normal. Who expected Anson to say again, but that was more than 2,400 years ago, during which no wizard was born. The two looked at each other. A family that has been passed down for more than 2,400 years is probably not that simple. Subconsciously want to remind my daughter to stay away. Oh, that's a shock, isn't it? Pendra? The surname seems to have some impressions, I thought. Well, Hermione, who had been working for a long time, suddenly widened her eyes. King Arthur? Is it the one I know? Anson smiled and nodded. If there is no second one, yes. It's amazing. I always thought it was just a legend and nothing else. Mr. Pendra. Hermione was surprised, and apologized for her words. So, do you want to be together? Hermione nodded instantly. Of course, it's just that I don't know how to get there. There is no platform of 9 3/4 here. I have been looking for a long time. Keep up with me. Run quickly into the third pillar of platform 9 and platform 10 at King's Cross. In a flash, the whole person disappeared. The little witch got even more excited, which was obviously magical. Mum, go ahead. Pushed the cart through the pillar and disappeared. Granger, I don't know what kind of world it is. Madam shook his hand. Don't worry, it's her life, and she's always been smart, you know. The two looked at each other and smiled. Their daughter has always been their pride and will continue to be. On the other side, just passing through it, I saw a dense wizard walking, which is more retro than the scene outside. Wizarding world, he arrived. Dang bulldoze, this is obviously wrong. There must be something wrong. Minerva, the Book of Access and the Pen of Acceptance have been decided, don't we? We can't change the outcome. As for what will happen when he comes, that's what we mean. Dumbledore said. He has always believed that cultivating and guiding is what Hogwarts should do. It doesn't change because of who he is or what he comes from. A person who can personally trap the first generation of the Dark Lord in prison will never be too narrow-minded. Maybe there are shortcomings, but it's already good. Don't you think it's a problem for Mr. Potter to appear at the same time as him? Dumbledore was silent. This matter is also something he needs to consider. Harry is involved in many things, but there is another person from the Pendra family. When the names of Anson and Pendra appeared in the Book of Access, he pulled out several beards in shock. Merlin's iron egg. How can it be? He knew that there could be no mistake in the Book of Access. He's just a student, Minerva. Okay, but I want him to be able to enter Gryffindor to study so I can watch him at all times. Well? Dumbledore turned his head to look at Minerva. You know how blunt you turn this topic. Helplessly shook his head. I can't be the lord of this, you know. The Sorting Hat always has his own ideas, and it stands to reason that he should be considered a purer blood. I don't care. Hey? Minerva was not embarrassed in the slightest. I still insist that he should go to Gryffindor to study. He is suitable here. Anson, who was far away on the Hogwarts Express, naturally did not know this. A classmate's toad is missing. Do you want to go with me to find it? I mean help classmates. Dabania sent an invitation. No, you go. I wish you a good journey. He refused. He prefers reading books to these things. Take out the standard spell and look at it primarily, and there are not many spell records inside, more of a basic explanation of some magic theories. It's very simple, but at the same time, it is also very general, and the words are instilling in the viewer a what you think is what it feels. Simply put, you think so, it is so. In terms of technical analysis, part of the thing can be seen from the levitation spell. The syllables of the first and second halves are described in English and Latin words for floating and ascending, respectively, which are very graphic. As for gestures, Anson felt that it was not something so important, probably needed by beginners, but for those who are proficient, gestures or even ones are not necessary. Examples of wandless casting, silent wandless casting, etc. No wands, no spells, no gestures, and none of this is necessary to cast magic. On the contrary, no matter what the spell is, it repeatedly emphasizes the emotions of the wizard himself. For example, death curses require strong evil thoughts. Spells such as the Patronus Charm require emotions such as happiness. Metaphysics, this is. Anson took out his purple-shirted wooden dragon hardcore wand, fly. Chinese used. The book paper in front of him flipped with the start of the wand, and I was surprised. Therefore, language is not fixed and necessary. There are many wizards in the wizarding world, resulting in different languages used by them to cast magic, and the language used to cast magic can be derived here, and there is no limit. In the same way, language is not necessary to cast magic. Silent spell. So, does the wizard's magic exist between heaven and earth, or does it exist inside the body? Why can wizards use it but moles can't? There is a talk of overdrawing magic in the wizarding world, and it is serious. In Anson's memory, all wizards who have overdrawn their magic power need to go to their wizard's special hospital, Street Mungo's Hospital for Witchcraft and Wizardry. But in terms of normal conservation of energy, what wizards can do, such as the operation of a little mouse blowing up a street with a thunderbolt explosion, is absolutely impossible to rely on the energy in the human body alone. Maybe. Anson's eyes lit up. Perhaps there is also magic in the wizard's body, and more through the magic in the body. The magic energy that exists in nature is induced in a specific way, just like lead. Interesting. Look at the wand. In this way, can it also be concluded that if the more magic power is contained in a person's body, the more magic fluctuations will trigger the outside world to increase the power of your spells? So, what are the factors that constrain wizards? After thinking about it, there are only 2 points. One is the body, and the other is the inner strength. Probably another one, knowledge of magic. The first is simple. The second is somewhat ethereal. Is it will? Is it spirit? Is it the soul? Or is it pure emotion? The third can only be accumulated by talent and time. Raise your wand again, fly. After streamlining his words, the pages can still be turned according to his ideas. After thinking about it, the thought was aimed at the whole book. Fly. Swish. The book swayed and flew in the air and flew with his thoughts, while the wand remained motionless. So gestures do not interfere with the effect of the spell. Of course, the premise is that your beliefs are strong enough. But why doesn't he feel the loss of his mana? Is it that you haven't reached your limit yet? What happens after you reach your limit? Oh, you're doing magic? Is this a levitation spell? Outside the door, D.A. Banya-san has returned. Anson nodded. It seems that you didn't help your classmates find things. How do you know? No, how do you cast a spell? I tried it at home, but it's a pity. Spread your hands. Anson smiled. Probably, it's talent. Breathing stagnantly, He-Sanshai was deeply malicious from his new classmates. Do you want to roll in? This is a challenge. Chapter 0063. She, Hermione, Granger, and Big Tooth, never gave in defeat. Your challenge. Ben Girl took it. She thinks that this classmate, who is very beautiful and polite and a gentleman, seems to want her to go out and play. while she hides and secretly studies. Do you want a roll? Angrily pouted and sat to the side, trying to take out the book from his luggage. No, I've always been number one in school. You have to cheer Hermione. Although this kid has a little bit of intelligence, you are always the best. Cool. Turn over the standard spell, elementary. However, he couldn't help but ask, how did you do it? I have read the introduction in the book, and it is very troublesome and difficult for a little wizard to cast a spell correctly for the first time. Sen spread his hands. You see it? Did you learn it before? After all, your family should teach you this. Not really. This is my first encounter with magic. I don't believe it. Hermione thought for a moment and said, can you teach me? What do you think it takes to cast magic? The little head thought about it, and after a few seconds said with certainty, wand, the right gestures, and the right spells. Are you sure? Am I sure? Am I sure? That's what the book says. In the face of Sen's rhetorical question, Hermione was also a little unsure. Is this really the case? It is not difficult to see that you should have read some books in advance. You are very smart, and your thirst for knowledge means that you will definitely be an excellent wizard in the future. Thank you. There was some pride on the little face. After all, he was praised. I hope you are too. Ha ha ha. Inexplicably, it seems that this is really a derivative world of children's books. Very good. It is up to him, then, to lead to the other side of this world. The harsh reality, redemption in the killing. So, that you see clearly. Pick up your wand and say the incantation. As soon as the syllable fell, D'Abanya's mouth opened wide, because the book in her hand had been twitched into the air by a force. Great power. Accompany Anson's wand to make a trajectory flight little by little. God, how did you do it? Can you succeed without performing the gestures and spells in the book? Sen put down the book. Well, that's where you need to think. Hermione-san, I hope you get something. Can't you tell me? I mean, maybe it's going to be faster. You've been in the world of ordinary people, so do you know why apples fall to the ground instead of the sky? Is it because of gravity? So, how does gravity come about? Obviously, the first question is relatively easy to answer, and the second question is not. Something that our knowledge can know. I can't say it. The same situation is the same in the wizarding world. Wizards casting spells, using magic, etc. are all similar to the truth contained in Newton's discovery of the fall of apples. As long as we can find the knowledge that exists in it, then you will find that everything is so simple. Sigh. The little girl buried her head in the book, as if she wanted to find the answer inside. And her first question was, why could Anson ignore those rules and cast the spell? If the book is not correct, then is there any point in studying again? Of course, Anson did not know this, just like D'Abanya. He was also immersed in the ocean of knowledge. If you want to be able to learn the books in the vault, you must have a basic and systematic knowledge as reserve. If he really wanted to look at the books he got in the vault now, I am afraid that he would not understand a word. For example, Runevin. This kind of writing is only mastered by a small number of people in the wizarding world, and it is a script that has been widely used by wizards in a long time. It takes a long time for the Hogwarts Express to reach the school. During this time, it was enough for Anson to read a whole book of standard spells and beginners, but after reading it, some questions reappeared in Anson's mind. What is the essence of magic? Can't think of it. Looking up, the classmate of D'Abanya had disappeared. Maybe he went out to play with his classmates, and it was dark. It means it's time for school. Don't look at this studious look. But after all, he is still a child. Well, in a way, if he does not count his previous life, then he is also a child. Unfortunately, because of the encounter and uneasy feeling in the Marvel world, as well as their traditional cultivation method of the family, I am afraid that he is not a child. With a crunch, the door was opened. Hermione said happily, "Hey, have you finished reading it?" "I really have perseverance," the senior said. "That we are almost there. I think we can change our robes." Anson got up directly. "Of course, you please first. I'll go out and wait for you." For a long time, Anson changed into a robe and the two sat in the carriage and waited. Slowly, you can see some points of light in the distance, which should be Hogwarts. It is said that magic is used in the vicinity, which isolates the technology and gaze of ordinary people. It's magical. Ding dong. After a few whining sounds of the train, someone was already shouting to get off the train, and as for the salute, there would be house elves to help bring it over. Is good news. The two got out of the car together. "First-year freshmen, all the first-year students are coming. You need to come with me on the boat." First-year freshman, tall and strong. This was Anson's first reaction. It is indeed too much height beyond normal people, which is at least more than 3 meters. Giant. That's interesting. Hermione quietly pulled Anson's robe. "Look over there." Looking in the direction she was pointing, it was a small Shota wearing glasses, but on the thin side, and next to him stood a tiger-headed red-haired boy. It should be the two useless men after Hermione. "He's Harry Potter. I wanted to tell you when I was on the train." "Yes." "You don't seem surprised." "He is the savior." "Are you used to giving your future to others? Or do you trust someone who doesn't know the unfamiliar?" The little girl was stunned by Anson's words. "I mean, He's famous. I can see it. Everyone around who saw Harry didn't cast that kind of gaze, but this one still enjoyed this kind of treatment. Understandable. You can't have more than 4 people on a boat. Everyone pay attention. Let's go. Hermione pulled to board the boat, and Anson looked curiously under the lake, where it was said that there was a big guy under the Black Lake. It was a giant squid. I heard that it is still Gryffindor changeable. Of course, I am afraid that this is fake. How can a wizard represented by courage be willing to become a squid? Chapter 072. But who expected that as soon as he turned his head, he saw the legendary Harry Potter and the red-haired troll Ron sitting on the side. You seem surprised, the red-haired troll said. Harry was a little embarrassed. Sorry. He didn't mean anything else. Mainly because the other boats were full. Of course, the boat belongs to Hogwarts, and I can't call the shots. After nodding casually, he looked at the lake again. Unfortunately, I didn't see the squid until I reached the shore. Ashore, a group of small wizards are led by the giant Hagrid towards the huge castle. Professor McGonagall, the little wizards have brought it. Thank you, Hagrid. Leave it to me next. Nodding, Hagrid carried the lamp and left. McGonagall returned to her solemn face. Everyone, welcome to Hogwarts. Well, in a few moments you will go through the back door, but you must go through the sorting house to determine which house you should go to before entering the dining room. The little wizards were excited. For Lee, it was a little difficult. If the sorting hat or the peeping old wizard and the faceless man on one side saw his thoughts through some kind of magic, that would probably be a disaster. Unfortunately, he could not refuse. Perhaps, things may not go in this direction, and the family ring brought him into this world, and it must have been a very safe insurance. Hopefully. Professor McGonagall said and turned and walked in, and could hear some voices of what was being said inside. Probably some words not to bully new students. It seems that what they said just now is true. Malfoy looked at Harry. Harry Potter is coming to Hogwarts. This is Claire Goyle, and my name is Mal. Saying that, he walked to the steps in front of Harley and stretched out his hand condescendingly, and said seriously, Draco Malfoy. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Well, Harry didn't seem ready to make friends, and Draco was embarrassed. Poof! Who expected the red-haired trolls standing on the side laughed. Draco frowned slightly. Think my name is funny? Know who you are at a glance. Red hair, second-hand robes. Only the Weasley family in the entire wizarding world has this style. Ron shrugged, not caring that he was being taunted. Draco overwhelmed people in terms of momentum, and instantly felt satisfied. Looking at Harry again, you will find that some wizarding families are superior, Potter. Don't make friends with people who are not 3. I can help you. Reach out again. I think I have the ability to tell the good from the bad. Thank you. Hands empty again. In the face of Harry, who rejected him twice, Rowers Draco is also a little angry, not to mention that no one has ever dared to be so unreasonable to him since he was a child. I wanted to get angry, but Professor McGonagall, who appeared behind me, patted her shoulder. Are you all ready? Follow me. Passing through the portal, behind it was a huge hall, surrounded by wizards of all ages. Only their front section was empty. It must have been deliberately prepared for the little wizards. And this hall seems to have been cast with spells such as traceless stretching. Otherwise it would not be possible to hold so many wizards. At a cursory glance, at least nearly 1,000 students. Very good. There is a starry sky on top of the magic cast. Candles are levitating, and everything is so magical. McGonagall led everyone to the front clearing, with a hat placed above the stool in front of her. Carefully glanced at the person in the seat above. Before the ceremony, Principal Dumbledore wants to say a few words to everyone. Dangbredo stood up. There are a few precautions to announce at the beginning of school. First-year students should note that this school strictly prohibits any student from entering their Forbidden Forest, and walking on the right side of the corridor on the 3rd floor is also forbidden. If you don't want to die a tragic death, don't go. Thank you. Tut. If I believed in your evil, if I hadn't known it, I would have believed it. Anson immediately thought it was not interesting. Well, this is a children's book. Next, I called the person whose name came up and put the hat on. Professor McGonagall looked at the roster and read aloud. Hannah Abbott. A little girl walked out of the crowd, walked over a little nervously, and when the hat was buttoned, a sound suddenly came out from the folds of the hat. Hufflepuff. Oh, snap, pop, snap. Hermione Granger. It's up to you. I'm a little scared. Anson, there is no danger. Well, hopefully. Summoning up the courage to walk over, she had discussed with Anson which house to go to. When she was in the car, and Anson's advice was Ravenclaw represents wisdom and thirst for knowledge. But she really wanted to go to Gryffindor, and the current headmaster Dumbledore was from Gryffindor. Well, full of wisdom and imagination, courage and reason, and no lack of thirst for intellectual exploration, I think Gryffindor and Ravenclaw are very suitable for you. Hermione subconsciously looked at where Lee Anson was standing, but couldn't get any answer. Faintly, I want to go to Gryffindor. Very good, then. Gryffindor. Instantly, there was a round of applause and cheers from the Gryffindor table. Next, Ron Weasley, another member of the Weasleys. Yes, people from your family always like to go to Gryffindor. Gryffindor. Next, Harry Potter instantly attracted the attention of the audience. Under Anson's gaze, it seemed that this person went to Gryffindor after some struggle. Destiny, or is it man-rigged? Next, Anson, Pendra. Not many people paid attention, but the people who should have paid attention never let up. Slightly disgusted, McGonagall put on her hat. A voice suddenly sounded in his mind. It's weird. Why? I don't sense the emotions or traits in your head. Is this normal? Perhaps. Who knows? Can't explain everything with magic. But I can still feel the purity in your blood. So, Slytherin. Oh, a string of long screams. Instead, the big-toothed classmate sitting in Gryffindor was a little disappointed, and Professor McGonagall couldn't wait to stab Snape at the moment. What a child. Chapter 008. I see you seem to have a good relationship with him. Ron didn't know how to say such a sentence. Hermione wanted to say nothing. She had known Anson alone until now, and she was not familiar with these people around her. She must be more inclined to Anson. But everyone around was saying all kinds of Slytherin words, and she was helpless. In the evening, after the banquet, the prefects of each academy are brought back to the lounge. The Slytherin common room was indeed dark. After all, you could see part of the Black Lake here, but not damp. There's magic. But when Anson saw the people in the same dormitory, Muzz were gone. Draco, hello, are you really from the Pendra family? I mean, haven't heard this surname for a long time. Reach out. Andrew Lee looked at it and shook it. After that day, the information that he was a descendant of the Pendra family was spread by their goblins, which was not surprising. Hello, I really am. Anson turned around and began to make his bed, raising his hand to release his things. Oh? He swallowed. I heard that items that are not specially allowed and purchased in specific places with the traceless stretching spell are prohibited. You're going to say it? Anson asked with a smile. Draco shook his head directly. Of course not. It's not good for me. Just curious. Anson thought for a moment and stretched out his hand. It's this ring. What's the pattern on it? Family crest. It is very quaint. The pattern is also very special. It is a red dragon. After all, King Arthur's a special nickname, the Red Dragon of Britain. Finishing done. Anson looked at the book again. Unable to resist, Draco lay on the bed and said, to be honest, I prefer to believe that you should go to Ravenclaw. Why do you say that? Whoever reads books on the first day of school is not Slytherin at all. Well, you have a point, and besides, most of the basics are starting to work out of Anson anymore. Maybe he should try something more advanced. For example, the library at Hogwarts. Do you have any spells? Draco was interested, picked up his wand and was about to perform for Lee Anson. Oolong out of the hole. Hiss. A snake appeared from the tip of its wand and fell to the floor, hissing and spitting letters, its eyes as if it were staring at its prey. Very handsome. So, will the snake that wizards made be real? This almost reaches the level of creation out of thin air, and from a scientific point of view, it involves not only the aggregation at the atomic level, but also the soul. And it's all done in an instant. It's incredible. Took out his wand. Apu, will you too? Flotation spell? Draco snorted. Also, there were no fools who could enter Slytherin, and a few years later even Draco's henchman Crabbe was able to burn down the House of Requirement with a fire spell. What are you doing? The next second, Draco was stunned. How come? Take out a knife. And it's sharp to look at. After the wand controlled the snake in front of him, Anson took out the various things that had been prepared in the ring, such as scalpels. Crunch. Start dismantling from the snake's body. Well, it's the snake's body structure, which has blood and muscle reactions and can sense pain. Something is very wrong. If this spell is regarded as a summoning type of magic, then this type of spell has already involved a level that even wizards have not noticed. Space. If not, then there is a soul and more microscopic manipulation involved. So is this summoned or manifested out of thin air? According to Draco's age and living environment, he basically does not know what atoms and molecules are, and it is even impossible to know what a soul is. But he still uses a so-called spell to present a living snake in front of him. So, how is this done? Draco shook his head. I don't know, just according to the requirements of the spell, it appeared. No, you didn't get my point. The discussion between the two attracted Crabbe and Goyle on the side, but please ignore them. Crabbe, Goyle, think about it, unless it's. Anson's eyes lit up and he blurted out, unless it is. There is something specific. There is a mechanism behind the wizard's use of his magic to induce the magic of natural existence. For example, rules, or guidelines. Let's say it's a rule that is there in itself, just exploited by spells and wizards. Then, the magic of the wizard is the condition that induces this rule, and then activates it. Through the wizard's belief. In this way, it is not the wizard who created the snake. Instead, the world created or summoned the serpent. The wizard just started taking advantage of this mechanism. Hiss. Anson gasped. He seemed to have discovered something incredible. In this way, spells, gestures, tones, etc., and even magic arrays are all magic laws summarized by wizard predecessors. It's like a physical phenomenon, and this kind of thing allows them to do things that they can't do with humans. Summoning out of thin air, void formations, and even flying and destructive attacks. What is he talking about? Goyle shook his head. I don't know, maybe it's crazy, you know. Slytherin always has no shortage of such people. Dilico glared at the two. He felt that this person, who might be from the legendary Pendra family, was very interesting. At least he didn't refuse to shake his hand, like Halipa. Decided, he will be my friend from now on. Don't you know that his hastily identified friend will beat him many times in the future? The kind that beats him miserably. It almost bankrupted the Malfoys. Next, the freshman curriculum is not complicated, and there are only 11 lessons added up throughout the week. There's plenty of time. Early, the four arrived at the classroom. The first lesson was Transfiguration, which Anson was interested in. Transfiguration is a very special knowledge in the entire wizarding system. It cannot even be associated with any spells, but it is magic. Very unique. Facing last night's cognition, Anson felt more and more that the study of Transfiguration class should be very important. This is also a level of knowledge that wizards cannot understand, and perhaps if you can understand the secrets behind the Transfiguration charm, you should be able to explain their secrets of all magic. He was looking forward to it. Hi, Anson, Dabanya-san greeted him. Nodding, Early, Hermione. Dilico immediately turned his head and asked, you seem to be very close to this little lion. But we are from the Snake Courtyard. You refuse to make friends with a good person? Dilico was stunned and speechless. Of course not. It seems that something was remembered and what decisions were made. Reaching out to Hermione, hello, I'm Dilico, Malfoy. Hermione walked to Lee Anson and put on a stinky fart look, and there was a big kind of saying, look, I made friends with her. When a cat jumped onto the podium, Anson couldn't help it. A few steps forward stepped forward and stared closely at the cat. It doesn't matter if she blows up or not. If you tease it with catnip at this time, will it bark? Will it be that he does not know, but he will definitely be hammered? Chapter 09. Reaching out and flicking above the cat, there is nothing invisible, which shows that the cat in front of him is a human change. But at the moment it is really just cats, and not a part of it that exists where the eye cannot see. How big is an adult? In the process of shrinking from the volume of a person to the volume of a cat, from large to small, will it change the density of later objects? According to normal logic, the physical strength of this cat should far exceed that of humans in the same volume. That is, the cat should have human strength and speed. He had not dissected the wizard who performed the animagus, and he did not know whether the wizard who performed this advanced transformation would change the body structure. If it could be changed, then the cat that Professor McGonagall turned into would be a cat structure completely. But how does she do it while remaining intelligent? McGonagall didn't know what the little wizard in front of her was thinking, but she could feel a coldness, especially Anson's kind of eyes. I can't wait to peel her skin to make her uncomfortable. The transfiguration was lifted for no reason. Mr. Pendra, what are you trying to do? What? A series of exclamations came out of the mouth of the little wizard, and he was shocked. How can a person become a cat? It's magical. Want to learn? Probably this kind of emotion. This is the experience that Professor McGonagall has summed up for decades, and young wizards eat this kind of trick more than adult wizards. Every time they experience the cute scares of cats, their attraction will be put on transfiguration. Professor McGonagall, may I ask you a question? Big eyes cute. Professor McGonagall seemed to think that Anson had been attracted to her transfiguration, and she was curious about Anson himself. Of course. May I ask Professor McGonagall, how did you change your weight from an adult to a cat after you turned into a cat using transfiguration? I just found out that if the cat is the weight of an adult, this podium should not be so easy to bear this weight, but obviously the cat is still the weight of a cat. In other words, what did the weight that belonged to Professor McGonagall lose? Moreover, why did the weight that disappeared come back after becoming a human again? What's going on in between? A series of questions came out of the mouth of the little wizard in front of him. McGonagall was surprised. Yes, it's not that no one has had the same problem over the years. Wizards may not speak of science, but they are definitely not ignorant of common sense. Pursed his lips. Sorry, this question belongs to the knowledge in advanced transfiguration, and it is not yet accessible to you. But if you have to say an answer, then I am still me. Reached out and made a gesture of invitation. Anson walked back confused with answers. Me? Or me? What kind of answer is this? I became a cat, but I am still me. Who is that cat? This is quantum physics, right? Are you playing superposition with me with magic? What about good metaphysics? McGonagall retransforms into a cat and catches two lost lion cubs. As the saying goes, there is no harm without contrast. Look at the people, Pendra. Look at their two little lions. Why are they so different? Say Snape again. What a good boy. How did I go to the Snake Courtyard? Okay, that's all for the basics of transfiguration. Now start learning how to use transfiguration. See the matches on the table in front of you? McGonagall held her head high and said, turn a match into a needle the way I taught you. Let's get started. Shuttling between desks. However, when she walked up to Anson, she was stunned again. Mr. Pendra, why don't you try it? Anson shook his head. Professor, I have a lot of questions I haven't figured out now, and I don't even know what I'm doing. But, Villavito, saying that, he turned the match in front of him into a needle, and even the pattern on it was vivid, and even the sharpness of the needle tip could be felt. Wonderful. Slitheringer, 5 points. Snap. There was a round of applause. McGonagall smiled at Anson again, but when she saw the small wizards who were frowning, she had to sigh how big the gap between people was. Mr. Weasley, what are you doing? Want to poke someone to death with your magic wand? Delacour leaned over and asked in a low voice, how did you do it? Raise your wand, cast a spell, and you're good to go. Delacour, well. He felt that the guy was showing off. It's really hard, hell. In fact, Anson is not as easy as they think. For example, there is a very important law in there. Transfiguration spell called Gumpo's Transfiguration Law. It mentions that the transfiguration spell cannot be created out of nothing and cannot be permanently transformed. Also, food that appears in transformation, such as a stone that is transformed into food, cannot be eaten, because when the magic of transformation disappears, the food will still be restored to stone. This means a stone that becomes food, or a stone. Moreover, depending on the size of the object and its deformation duration is proportional. As the volume of the object increases, the shorter the time it will be able to support its deformation. All of the above is to illustrate a problem. The magnitude of magic affects the power of transfiguration. Lift the steel needle turned from a match in front of you and touch it with your fingers. Even the blood that flowed Anson did not care, but was surprised. It is the touch of steel and the sharpness of a needle point, and the match cannot pierce its own skin at all. In other words, at this moment, this steel needle turned from a match is a steel needle. That is, to change its own nature. So back to transfiguration, this seems to be an interesting phenomenon. Suppose that the object being deformed can be permanently deformed by being able to maintain its magic power for a long time. Thus, even if it becomes food that can still be digested after eating, it is still a deformed state. Characteristic after excretion. There is a paradox here. If restored to stone without change, so, where does the energy that food is digested come from? Anson was in a mixed mood at the moment, and he was sure that there was a mechanism that wizards have never discovered or understood. It's like casting a spell, and the key to this is magic. Thinking of this, Lee Anson stood up and asked loudly, Professor McGonagall, I'm sorry. Professor McGonagall, I have a question. It's important. Oh? Say, Mr. Pendra, but next time please be quiet. I think we can all hear it. Of course. Professor McGonagall, excuse me, what is magic, or what is the nature of magic? Where is it? How was it born? McGonagall froze. This question is very tricky. Mr. Pendra, this is not a question you should consider. Of course, if you can get no at the end of the year, I may be able to answer it for you. Still holding his head high. This is a dear cat lady who will never admit that she herself does not know. Maybe she had some ideas, but she couldn't give an accurate answer. What is the essence of magic? I am afraid that only the real God knows. Chapter 010. The Transfiguration class that began at 9 a.m. ended hastily, and Anson didn't have much to gain. But for other little wizards, the gains were rich. For example, Slytherin trumpeted that he had a genius in the snake courtyard and so on. After all, there are probably not many people who can ask Professor McGonagall, and because of the awkwardness between Slytherin and Gryffindor, the two sides are inextricably linked, probably around Hermione and Harry and Anson. Some say that Anson alone is as low as their so-called savior. Who cares? Anyway, the people of the snake courtyard are very self-satisfied, and they are arrogant and do not even bother to explain, and even their attitude towards Anson is much better. Although Anson didn't care, no one and nothing could stop him from pursuing magic. Even if Professor McGonagall didn't give him an answer, he still had a lot of respect for Anson. Perhaps their understanding of magic is still one-sided and strange, and the entire wizarding world has developed for thousands of years, possibly longer. But the study of magic is still very limited in Anson's view. However, this group of people is always the group of knowledge, although they do not really understand the nature of magic, or even spy on the truth of magic. But at least people who have mastered the relevant laws, for example, the use of magic spells, and related techniques. Importantly, they will be happy to pass on the knowledge they have. As for what caused the current situation of knowledge development in the wizarding world, Anson thought about it and thought that it should be caused by the total amount of knowledge. There is a saying that stands tall to see far. You have to have a high and wide enough line of knowledge to see more. The same applies in the wizarding world. It seems that wizards have not considered and delved into some magical phenomena all this time. For example, why can't animagus turn into magical creatures? Although the existence of a blood spell is also considered one, it should be regarded as a failed transformation type. For example, why do some wizards have abilities similar to fantastic beasts, Velar bloodline and giant bloodline? Anson has seen the giant Hagrid, more than 3 meters tall, with a strong body, which is definitely not the physique that humans should have, and he is superior to humans and wizards in resisting demons and blows. In other words, the talents for such people should be much better than normal wizards. After all, they have 1 or more talent bonuses. For example, the study of the soul. Sorcerers know that they act on the soul, So are there any wizards who have studied this type? Although prohibited, it is also an exploration of knowledge. Obviously, at least in the boundaries of normal wizarding life, there have been no reports and progress. Unfortunately, many of the secrets that exist in magic are in a state of waiting to be developed. Lunch. There was a chatter in the hall, and from time to time the little witch would look at Anson, who was famous this morning. "Hi Anson, can I sit here?" Big Banya stood beside Anson, not even caring that this was the long Slytherin table. Anson nodded. "Of course, if you are not afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Gossip, slander and the like." Saying that, Hermione fell silent. Anson looked a little like laughing. As a little girl she can do this. "Step is already good." Draco sneered in his heart and did not speak. "Looks like you're having a harder time in Gryffindor than I know." "I shouldn't have done anything wrong. I just answered a few answers, or even added points to the academy, but they didn't seem to like me very much," Hermione said, depressed. Anson hummed, thought for a while and said, "Is there a possibility that they are jealous of you?" "Jealous?" Draco haha laughed. "Jealous? Jealous of her front teeth?" "It's not funny, Anson." "Yes, I remember that you always talked about nobility and glory, and even boasted that you had a good family education, and even full of pride in your so-called family. What makes you proud of making fun of your classmates' looks?" "Mr. Draco, please let me know." Draco and I couldn't say anything a few times, but my face was flushed. He didn't expect Anson to contradict him. Shouldn't he echo his words and laugh together? That's what Slytherins are supposed to do, isn't it? "Why, Anson, we're friends, or Slytherin." "Remember what I told you before you shook Hermione's hand for the first time? Why refuse to make friends with a good person?" "Yes, Draco, why?" "I thought you would be well educated by your family, at least gentleman and wiser, but obviously, you do not have such qualities." It gave Draco a feeling that Anson was disappointed in him. "Draco, she's a hump." "I mean, are you better than her?" Transfiguration classes were taken together, and although Draco ended up turning matches into needles, he was much slower than Hermione. In that sense, Hermione's talent was better than his. "I don't think she slandered you, nor did she say anything to you in terms of looks." "Draco, is this the quality that your family education gives you?" Slytherin itself is a gathering place for a group of pure-blooded people, even proud. In a sense, Slytherin represented the privileged class of wizards. It is understandable to use education, inheritance, and honor to beautify oneself and even look down on other wizards' origins. When these are met with suspicion, they are naturally angry. Even Draco now had a small face flushed, but he couldn't refute it. Anson didn't pay attention to him and turned to look at Hermione. "You see, jealousy and ignorance tend to make people lose their minds, and jealousy of someone who is better than him often indicates that he is a weak person who needs pitiful attention and vanity. Can you understand?" Hermione thought thoughtfully. "I don't understand, but I'm still thankful for what you said for me, and besides, you're not at all like a Slytherin." "Of course, I'm a student at Hogwarts." "Well said, Mr. Pendra." Professor McGonagall called and walked behind. For Mr. Pendra's remarks, Slytherin adds 1 point. This is just a small episode. The strong often surrender only to the stronger. If Anson needs the power of wizards to his own use, or even to learn magic safely, he needs to make some changes to the wizarding world. Let's start with their ideas. The wizarding world needs to change, at least in his case. Chapter 011. At noon, after lunch, the owl sent Mr. Spencer an update, who had set up a room in Diagon Alley. Because of Kim Gurren's opening of the way, he also bought a property in Hogsmeade Village next to Hogwarts, and for wizards, not everyone can afford to buy property here. It was a symbol of money, so much so that Spencer's fame opened. "I heard that there are many unemployed wizards who have been collected." "Well, it is still very quick and convenient to open the way in Gingren." According to Anson's understanding, even people who graduated from a school like Hogwarts may not be able to get a good job in the wizarding world. The relationship between mole protection laws, wizards generally do not live in the world of ordinary people. The two are like two parallel lines, existing with each other without interfering with each other. This has led to the fact that wizards who should be able to obtain a high-quality life through various means are still in an embarrassing situation. And Spencer's relationship with Spencer's Big Sargon also had an effect. As for whether it will be targeted by dark wizards, the answer is yes. But as long as you give more, you will not work less. The upstream and downstream of the wizarding world are almost monopolized by the so-called pureblood families, and it is basically difficult for normal wizards to have employment opportunities if they are not in these families. "I have to make a living, or do something that you can't see, or you can only starve." In this way, it is not difficult to achieve the situation that Anson wants. After all, there are still few people they are closing in, and they will not let the pureblood family notice. In the afternoon, there is a herbal medicine class, and there are only 2 lessons in this day. For Anson, who was accustomed to the Great Yanhuan course in his previous life, this is simply not too easy. But the herbal medicine class seems to be because it is a beginner. It's not complicated, it's mostly just teaching some potions recognition. At the urging of Mrs. Pince in the library, Anson reluctantly put down the book and returned to the bedroom. "Anson, can I talk to you?" Draco came over, with a slightly muffled voice, It was clear that he was not doing well today. Crab and Goyle on the side did not dare to say anything more, and dutifully did their role as followers. Mr. Dilico, do you have any questions? I'm sorry for today's events, I didn't mean it that way. Oh? It's rare to hear you apologize, but did you get the wrong person? You should apologize to Hermione, not me. No way, she's from a mole. Fried? Anson leaned back in his chair and said leisurely. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with me. Why apologize to me? Yes, you think I'm stronger than you. Why do you feel that way? As if he had seen through his mind, Dilico froze. He didn't know why he had such thoughts, he just felt that it would be easy for Anson to get him. After all, according to his understanding, perhaps Anson's attainment in magic is far from as simple as he seems. He's not a fool. Is it because my performance makes you think I'm strong? Anson smiled and said, I heard about some things in your family. It is said that your father became a Death Eater because of Voldemort's powerful connections. Hey, it's really the same style. You dare? Dare what? Say your father? Why not? Dilico took out his wand and pointed it at Anson for no apparent reason. Snap. Anson clapped his hands. Yes, it's a bit of a look now. At least not the wizard who only brainlessly mocks others. So, what spell do you want to use on me? Oolong out of the hole? Or what? Oolong out of the hole. Anson's repeated words made Dilico lose his mind, but no matter what it was, he used a spell. A black snake fell from the tip of its wand to the ground and hissed. Gee, still won't learn well. It seems that children in the wizarding world have very different styles from ordinary normal people. It's kind of stupid. Obviously knowing that he couldn't beat Anson, but he still shot and played with me with a bright sword. Oolong dissipate. As soon as the words fell, the black snake that had just appeared disappeared immediately, and the counterspell of the oolong coming out of the hole was very simple for Anson. Read it out again. All petrified. A grey-white light and shadow appeared from Dilico and quickly disappeared. Dilico stood stiffly in place, unable to move. Crab. Did you just see that? Garamir nodded. Well, wandless casting, Merlin's small intestine, how is this possible? It's only been a few days. Another perfect subject. Approaching Dilico's side and taking a closer look, it really seems to be petrified, literally. Magic really can't be forcibly explained by science, otherwise the current Dilico might have been hung up instead of imprisoned. The next day, Dilico, who had been standing all night, was taken out by Brack and Goyle. At the same time, there was also news throughout the school that Dilico and Anson had a wizard duel but were defeated. As for who spread it, Brack and Goyle will not admit it. The main thing is that they are in the same dormitory as Anson. At noon, Anson was very satisfied with today's class. There will be a charms class in the afternoon, which is perfect for Anson, who is new to magic. Look over there, Ron gestured to Harley. It's interesting to hear that Dilico was cast by that weirdo and stood for the night last night. Him? Harry couldn't believe it either. Anson has always given him the feeling that he is very gentle and gentlemanly. How could he do such a thing? At this time, Anson looked up to this side, and the two hurriedly lowered their heads. Hell, can you hear it from this distance? Hermione snorted. Isn't it okay to discuss others behind your back? Anson, not the bad guy. You think? Ron grinned. Yes, yes, who doesn't know you're friends with him? Gryffindor is friends with Slytherin. Funny. Are you envious? Ron was choked. How could it be? How could I possibly envy being friends with a Slytherin? No way. Hermione seemed to have figured something out. Yes, it turns out that what Anson said is true. What do you mean? No, Harry, I hope you understood this sooner. On the other side, Dilico looked at Anson's gaze and no longer hid the knife, but unfortunately, he couldn't do anything. A person who can cast wandless spells just by touching magic. He can't beat him. However, he had to find the venue again, so he blocked the door of the lounge after dinner. Anson raised his eyebrows. Are you three planning a duel with me? Dilico pretended to be calm. Not bad, dare you? Interesting. Then, what do I get if I win? In other words, what price tag do you have for me to fight with you? Chapter 012. But the next second, Anson froze. No wonder there would be confidence to put him right, blocking him at the door of the lounge. But calling the senior students. Just look at the height. So, that's your bottom line? Dilico said expressionlessly. The strength of the pureblood family, unity and good use of their own advantages are also partial. Blame you for not having such strength, dare you? Anson repeated what he had just said. If I win, what do I get? Dilico thought for a moment. If you win, I will see you in the future. It's not going to do me any good. So what do you want? Anson raised his eyebrows. I'm afraid you can't afford what I want. You'll know then, can you start? But, fit. Dilico and a group of senior students had just raised their wands, and before they could finish speaking, they saw a point of light pop out of Anson's wand. The next moment, everyone in the lounge watched as the people in front of Anson all stood still, sluggish. Spell fixing? This is a second grade spell. No, it should be a spell that can only be cast in the third grade, right? No, to be precise, it should be 4 years old to perform normally. Looking at the departing Anson, the little snakes were a little overwhelmed. So what now? If the D knew that they were stuck here all night, he would probably be angry. and the last time I heard that Dilico was imprisoned for one night. The dean would already be angry. Called. There you go. Why aren't you going? I wouldn't dare. Someone left the lounge and went straight to Snape's office. More people are still looking in the direction Anson left. Is this person really a little wizard? Can anyone tell me what the hell is going on? Snape, who was full of gloomy face, walked in angrily from outside, like an old bat. Theodore looked at him. He was one of the inheritors of the 28 pure blood family, and, in the face of this scene, he felt that he needed to help the stupid Dilico. Dean, it was Anson who did it, and it fixed everyone in an instant. A moment? Snape thought he had misheard. What spell was used? Spell fixing? That's right. Scold. With a sneer, he had forgotten that this student who had been speculated by Dumbledore before entering the school was a descendant of King Arthur. Unexpectedly, it also surprised him. Call him. Theodore quickly got up, and not long after, aboard Anson followed. All the Snake Academy students gathered in the lounge again, and everyone was curious about how Anson would be punished. Casting a spell on a group of students is not a good thing. Snape stared at Anson. Follow me to the office, Mr. Pendra. Of course, Dean. As soon as he reached the door, Snape turned around and said, lift their fixture. You can cast a spell. You should be able to break the spell, right? Curse stop. With his hands hidden under his robe, he didn't even glance at Dilico and the others, who were still worried after being lifted the curse. Inside the office, the sitting old bat looked seriously at Anson, who was sitting across from him. Professor, I think it's late. If you don't have anything to say to me, I'll go back to sleep. There will be classes tomorrow. You don't seem to be afraid of me. Like a cold winter wind blowing on the skin, the coldness has not been concealed for half a minute. Anson looked up and laughed. Why should I be afraid of you? Most students are afraid of me, and I think you should be afraid too. Only the weak will be afraid. Only the weaker will want to make the weak fearful. May I ask, which kind of professor? The weak and weaker. So, you're strong? Snape's face was still a dead face, and no emotions could be seen. But from the look in his eyes, it was not difficult to see that it was a deep curiosity. Anson shook his head. I don't deny, I don't admit it, I don't object. Compared to students in the same grade or even at an advanced stage, I should be considered a strong person. But if I compare with professors, I should be worse. Scold. I don't know what it is. Snape felt that this was just a little wizard with strength but no brains, and he should go to the reckless Gryffindor. The damn cat lady has been nagging him many times. However, the next second, Anson's words surprised him. How about making a deal, Professor? Deal? The stunned face was directly exposed. Snape even repeated, you want to trade with me? What to trade? For example, the chance to resurrect Lily and Devon's rumble. An aura erupted from Snape, and a wand was pressed a centimeter in front of Anson's forehead. The whole person is like an old bat at this moment, and the heroon is lying on the table. It was as if he could poke Anson's little head melon with his magic wand in the next second. The eyes were crazy and blood red. The maniacal distorted face said word by word, you, too, and, no, Tau, what? As you heard, resurrecting the person you want to resurrect. I'm afraid I'm the only chance for you. By what? By you little wizard. How about the surname Pendra? Snape still hadn't lowered his wand and was still staring at Anson. Review. Anson has considered various methods, but there is no doubt that this is the fastest way, and using what he wants in the face of a person with a fetter is the most defeatable to break a person's bottom line, commonly known as weakness. Pendra? Oh, the devil knows where you got it from. It's okay to deceive wizards who don't have intelligence. You can't fool Dumbledore too? What about the Book of Access? Anson voiced the reasons that Snape could not refute. Even if Dumbledore would make a mistake, the Book of Access would never be possible. Silence again. After a few minutes, Anson shook his head. It seems that the weight of that person in your heart does not seem to be so important. In that case, I am afraid I have to leave. As soon as he said that, he had to get up. Wait. Snape was drenched and slumped into the chair behind him, but his eyes were extremely focused, as well as nostalgia. What way? What do I have to pay? Anson smiled. Lounge. Opening the door, Anson saw a bunch of people sitting here chatting. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. So, all petrified. Brush. In an instant, all the little snakes in the common room turned into statues motionless. Good night. After the gentleman's bending salute, he returned to sleep. His own spell seems to be much more powerful than that cast by normal wizards, which is really interesting. Next, when Anson arrived at the classroom, the little snakes arrived one after another. But Anson's eyes began to dodge a little. The ideology of the strong began to take root. What a day. Hi, Dilico. Dilico walked a little faster, and didn't look back. Good morning, Anson. The lions sitting on one side were all floated. What's wrong with the people of the snake courtyard? Seamus showed a smile. I heard that Anson stayed in the snake courtyard in the lounge last night. All night. Hiss. Pumping. This guy should come to Gryffindor. Definitely. Chapter 013. What happened last night? Severus Snape stood in front of Dumbledore and subconsciously used the brain occlusion technique, so that he couldn't even believe the old man now. As you know, that kid fixed everyone with a body-fixing spell. Fixing charm? Dumbledore was surprised. It's incredible. If I'm not mistaken, he just entered school. The first grade used a spell that would only be learned in the fourth grade, but it was extremely powerful to fix so many people, even senior students. When they were students, I am afraid they would not have been able to do it. At least it won't be so good. Why, fighting. The excellent tradition of the Snake House. Dumbledore looked up and gave him a serious look. Severus, you seem to have some secrets hidden from me, but I hope you can be serious. That child still needs your protection. You don't have to tell me that. Shouted loudly, slammed the door out. Dumbledore grabbed a cockroach pear and put it in his mouth, and the white sugar juice fell on their Snow White beard. Myself? Did you overlook something? According to Draco, Hermione and her useless two men were messing around with the wind and rain. But Anson didn't have as much attention to pay attention. It's nothing more than the child's drama. Even if he knew that Quirrell had Voldemort in him. But Quirrell was so easy to deal with. At the last moment, Quirrell snapped his fingers and caused all the flames around Harry and their room he was in, using a raging fire. It doesn't matter what spell it is. What matters is that the person is casting the spell silently, without a fight. From this point alone, it can be seen that Quirrell's magic cultivation is not low, not to mention that people are still from Ravenclaw, and the knowledge content can be less. Movies are just movies after all, and now they all belong to real-world people. Without the existence of the Wisdom Aura, it is still unknown whether Harry would have survived. Of course, old Ian must have stayed on this side the whole time than Dumbledore. Even Snape. As for the reason, it is not complicated. Dumbledore detected the existence of the Horcrux, and wanted to see if it was just the same as he guessed. Killing a Voldemort's remnant soul does not change anything, but after determining the existence of Horcruxes, finding all the Horcruxes can finally result in Voldemort. Professor, what is the nature of magic? Inside Flitwick's office, Flitwick, who had leprechaun blood, looked at Anson who asked the question. There was a pause. This is a very deep question. What is the magic? I'm afraid I can't give you the answer you want directly. Mr. Pendra, what do you think is magic? Rhetorical question. Anson had asked many professors this question, even Mrs. Pince, who ran the library, or their wizards who had been summoned by Spencer's butler. However, no one could give him a reasonable answer. Thought about it. Professor, I think the essence of magic is an energy that touches rules. Flitwick's eyes lit up. It's a very interesting statement. Why do you think so? Whether it's a spell, a potion or an alchemical product, the most important factor is magic, not wizards. I have collected a lot of information about wizards and casting habits. In the end, it turned out to be different, but the result was the same. Flitwick sat down. What does this say? To illustrate that the result of our casting is inherently present and not what we create. Professor, the power we use is not the power we think, but a kind of power under mysterious rules. Excited. So how do you prove it? The kind of rule you said. Flitwick was curious. Although he somewhat agreed with Anson's statement, there were too many differences in their wizarding world about magic. No one can convince anyone. Anson took out his wand and drew a few characters on the void. This is the Loon Rune? Flitwick was surprised. He really didn't expect that Anson had learned this point on his own, which could not be taken until at least 3 years old. Yes, elective. The Rune of Loon is also known as Rune. Runeven's cognition and learning are very complicated, which will affect the next step of their little wizard to a certain extent, so even the school does not force everyone to learn. It's just that Anson should have mastered a lot of Runeven. Very strange idea. This should mean absorption, right? Anson said excitedly. That's right, Professor. After I used this Loon Rune on myself, obviously, my magic power increased a lot. At least that's the speed of mana recovery. Merlin's beard. Professor Flitwick jumped out of his chair and walked quickly to Anson's side to examine, and, after more than 10 seconds let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, nothing happened to you. Is the professor afraid that I will become silent? Flitwick stayed. I'm just worried, you know. Anson is clear. The silent appearance and birth is undoubtedly sad, mostly because the little wizard cannot channel his own increasing magic and stimulation. The result is swayed by power. But this is undoubtedly also illustrating a problem. Once a small wizard becomes silent, its magic power is even much more than that of an adult wizard. Why is it that the magic of the little wizard after arriving at the academy or starting to study seems to be hidden? Another, why is there so much magic in silence and the loss of mind and uncontrollable silence? Anson could only think, mental and physical. Only a strong enough body and spirit can control greater magical powers. Can I use it? Flitwick was curious. Anson nodded and cast this kind of Runeven on Flitwick, only to make the two frown. It doesn't seem to work. Don't be discouraged, Professor. I believe that there is no magic in phenomenon alone. There must be something in it that we have not noticed. Perhaps, after finding this thing, wizards will be able to usher in a change. I'm looking forward to it. Teaching Anson spells on a daily basis, Flitwick loved him. Who doesn't love a speedy little wizard? Walking to the Black Lake, Anson sat cross-legged by the lake. If someone has special abilities, they will find that the magic fluctuations around Anson at this moment are extremely obvious, and even a large amount of magic power is pouring into his body. For a long time, with a muffled snort, Anson opened his eyes. No, the body is almost unable to withstand it. After absorbing it again, a pain began to come from the body, and it had to stop. According to the current magic power, it is no less than an adult wizard. Strange. Am I special, or the method is special? Anson shook his head, unable to think of it. It seems that learning magic and mastering magic on your own is very fast. Chapter 014. With the deepening of the study of the runes of Lune, Anson seemed to perceive something. The essence behind magic, the rules. Like physical phenomena, people generally discover this rule and summarize and grasp it. So, there are various physical definitions, such as the 3 laws of mechanics, and various physical formulas. The same is true of the rules of magic. A means of visualizing the rules of magic is needed. Anson realized this. To know what the rules are, unless he can observe, even by means of finding out. In the end, sleep and food are forgotten. Anson also found a very old magic, the true eye, in the Pendra family collection. Exercise your eyes repeatedly in a specific way, and once successful, your eyes can see things that ordinary people and wizards cannot detect. In other words, you can see the rules behind the magic after it is activated. The process is not complicated, but it is just the active use of magic to wash the eyes at a specific frequency and way. Don't look simple. Few people in the entire wizarding world will consciously mobilize their magic power, even on their own bodies. It's weird, but there's a phenomenon. On a dark and windy night, inside the room where there was a requirement, Anson rubbed his eyes and opened it. Flotation charm. The next second Anson opened his mouth wide, and he saw it. After casting his own spell, the book suspended in the air by the spell has a complex set of magic lines. If you really want to make an analogy, you can refer to the yellow appearance formed after their Marvel Carmitage mage used the spell. With the infusion of its own magical power, it represents that the rules of the floating spell are constantly turning and changing. It seems splittable, and different parts represent different functions. After thinking about it, the magic injection increased. At the same time, books quickly flew in the room where you needed it. And that rule is turning faster and more complex. What if the magic was only injected into this part? Think and do it. When the magic only enters partially, the book falls to the ground but still moves rapidly. So, this part represents moving, not floating. So, what if magic is only injected into the floating part? As a result, the book only stopped in the air and did not move. However, this discovery does not seem to improve his strength, but only allows him to understand magic more intuitively and the rules behind it. This method tested Anson's guess. The wizard's spirit is the activation energy, the magic is the fixed resonance energy, and the way to achieve the spell is the rules and energy that exist in the universe itself. The next day, Defense Against the Dark Arts class. Professor Quirrell lectures most of the time normally, but if other professors pass by or show up, he will revert to stumbling again. Be careful. Just got out of class. Mr. Pendra, can I invite you to the office? Professor Quirrell asked. Anson said, of course, Professor. Inside Quirrell's office, Anson was ready for everything. He was sure that the greatest white wizard was around, or at least he would keep an eye on Quirrell. Quirrell poured a cup of coffee. Please taste. I don't have anything good here. Professor, you don't know if you called me? Shallow paused. Mr. Pendra, I heard that you are really from that family. The Pendra family? Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? The Pendra family is from King Arthur, and has a special relationship with Archmage Merlin. Mr. Pendra should have mastered a lot of lost spells, right? Anson frowned. Professor, what do you want to say? Is it possible that there is a magic that can save someone who is controlled? Very eager. That kind of look, Anson could see that it was a desire for life. No, it should be a luxury to be precise. From this point of view, Dumbledore was not a qualified white wizard, at least not great, and it was impossible for him not to see Quirrell's situation. But he didn't try his best. Of course, maybe he really can't help it. Quirrell dared to say such things to him, which also showed that Voldemort may not wake up all the time. Very good. Anson thought for a moment. What do I get? As soon as these words came out, Quirrell stood up, as if he had thought of something and had to endure excitement to calm his mood. Sorry, I just get a poor soul, or a servant, perhaps, but it's dangerous. Quirrell's eyes widened. You know? How would you know? Why don't you know? I think it's not just me who knows. Quirrell smiled. There was inevitably a little more sadness in his smile, and he understood the meaning of Anson's words. It's just that the professors in the entire Hogwarts, no one wants to help him. That's the Dark Lord. If it were him, he wouldn't have made a move, right? He had turned to the savior, Mr. Potter, but the man didn't seem to understand him, and he gave up. But recently, Anson's high profile and outstanding performance and mysterious origin have given him a glimmer of hope again. In the next second, Anson suddenly felt that the office was a little cold. Pendra, sir, then, No, no you, what do you think of the recent Defense Against Dark and Magic class? The face is not moving. Anson held his breath and whispered. Professor, I'm just a student. If you don't have anything to tell me, I'm afraid I'm leaving. Dang, of course. Closing the office door. The two had their own thoughts. No, 3 to be exact. From Anson's point of view, Quirrell should not yet be fully controlled by Voldemort, at least for now. If it is in the later stage, maybe there is really no way. As for whether he is away, yes, but is it cost effective? The method is also extremely simple, and you can do it with a life spell. In the original play, Voldemort fired an Avidiso curse against the Harry Horcrux with fragments of Voldemort's soul, who died. Fragments of Voldemort's soul. In the same way, now that Voldemort parasitizes Quirrell, it can be achieved by the same means. The question is whether Quirrell's body is in his control or Voldemort's body once he suffers this blow. Although Anson is powerful, he will not be arrogant enough to think that he can fight a professor-level wizard. But Snape could, Dumbledore could, even most professors can. Seeing Anson return, Dilico couldn't help but ask, are you alright? Of course. If I have anything, you can tell me. My father is a school director. Anson grinned. Admittedly, this one has all kinds of flaws, but it's not too bad. Chapter 015. Time flies. During this period, Anson's research on magic went one step further, based on the discovery of the true eye. The rules of magic seen in professors are simpler than those in students, and in a way, this represents their attainment in a certain kind of magic. For example, Anson himself just said that the floating spell may be the size of a basin, but in Professor Flitwick, it's only the size of a bowl. This shows that Professor Flitwick's mastery of the levitation spell has reached an astonishing point, and silent and wandless casting is not a problem. So, this is not only a bonus to the total amount of mana, but even a bonus to belief, but also a research on magic technology. Anson thought carefully. Others will not have the existence of the true eye, but they can still cultivate a certain spell to this point. I have to say it's very powerful. As for Dumbledore, Anson had not seen this man use magic several times, and it was difficult to explain his strength. However, since he is called the greatest white wizard of our time, it will certainly not be simple. Based on this, can we continue to improve at this point? It should be possible. Wizards don't have much to do to improve their physical qualities, but they can improve their spirits, or beliefs, over time. This should be the change that comes with the growth of magic. Then, how to take the initiative to improve physical fitness and mental strength. This is Anson's primary consideration. Looking at the entire wizarding world, there doesn't seem to be much to do. In some places, such things have become taboo topics, and most wizards believe that actively changing their body and mind is harmful. Anyway, he hadn't seen much information. There is a general strange perception, such as a sentence that Dumbledore once said, "Death is just another great adventure." It can be seen that they seem to be particularly obsessed with thinking that there will be another form of rebirth after death. Very weird. How can they be sure that death will be a new life? Of course, this involves soul research, which is not yet accessible to Anson. What's wrong with her? At dinner, Anson looked curiously at the big-toothed classmate on their other side eating tears. Dilico looked strangely and learned, "It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. Some people say she can't make friends, and that's it." Anson fell. Is the time so fast? It should be almost Halloween, and it seems that she and her two useless men are not very good. Speak human language. Dilico shrugged. She reminded the Weasleys that trolls that the levitation spell was mispronounced, and then our beaver lady cried. "You didn't stop it?" Dilico shook his head directly. "Why? It's not any good for me, is it?" "Well, it's very Slytherin." "Or do you want to help?" Anson shook his head as well. "Same answer as you." Dilico's eyes lit up. "I said you were Slytherin." "Really? I thought you should go to Gryffindor." Turning his head to look at the Gryffindor table, the red-haired troll and the savior he wanted to follow were eating and drinking heartlessly, and Hermione, who was crying because of them, didn't even notice it. Also, after all, he is only an 11-year-old child. But amazingly, every child in the Weasley family is extremely good, except for this troll. If it weren't for the red hair, it is estimated that some people would wonder if they were picked up. Not only is there a gap between his heart and ability, but also his other brothers. It is obvious. As if sensing the gaze, the troll gnawed the head of the chicken leg and looked over, and found that Anson quickly looked down after looking at him with a smile. "Merlin's second, that guy is watching me." Harry froze. "Who?" The hand moved underneath, and Harry looked towards Anson. Dilico and Anson raised their drink glasses at the same time. Both of them immediately lowered their heads, obviously suppressed by the momentum. "Dilico, I really don't believe in this kind of role. Why people are called saviors." "Ha, who to save?" "I'm afraid I have to wait for someone to save him." "Who knows?" Halloween. "Good thing to have you, Anson." "Don't know what to say every day like those few," Hagrid grumbled as he walked forward. "How many of them?" "Hermione." "Yes, they are always inquiring about confidential things. You know, you are still children. There are many things that you still can't touch." Hearing this, Anson lying It seems that these people have already found something the matter on the 3rd floor. You know too? Hagrid scratched his head. It's not hard to guess, isn't it? So, where is this tree going to go? A huge tree was floating next to Anson, which was used for Halloween dressing, and Hagrid was judged by the Ministry of Magic not to continue using magic because of some previous events. So, if Anson doesn't help him, it is estimated that he can only rely on brute force to pull back. Thank you, Anson. Just put it in the hall. Professor Flitwick will take care of it then. Of course, Hagrid. No thanks. Hagrid grinned. To be honest, Anson gave him a strange feeling. Well, mysterious. Yes, that's the word. But he would love to have someone who could talk to him or even understand him. Discrimination is not limited to pureblood and half-bloods and mole wizards. Even Professor Flitwick had such troubles. Inside the hall, Flitwick couldn't help but applaud when he saw the big tree floating next to Anson. Cool, very superb levitation spell, Mr. Pendra. Just call me Anson, Professor Flitwick. Then, do you need my help? Of course, that's the best. The surrounding group of little wizards watched the scene, once again subverting their cognition, and a series of pendants flew to the branches without life and wands. Extremely smooth. At night, Dilico touched Anson. What's wrong? Did you hear that Hermione was angry with the Ron troll again today? Didn't you see that? She didn't even attend the dinner? Are you still paying attention to this? Dilico snorted several times. I was. Yes, she has promised to make friends with me. I care about friends. I thought you would continue to insist on looking at things through the eyes of a pure-blooded retard. No, I seriously considered what you said, and for this reason, I also asked my mother. Why should I refuse to make friends with a good person? That's very serious. As for whether it is true or not, he does not judge. However, if memory serves, Quirrell will immediately run in and shout, boom, trolls, there are trolls in the basement. A look of horror and panic, completely without the slightest demeanor of a professor. Got it all now. With a bang, he slammed straight on the ground and passed out. Anson frowned. It's a pity that tonight's dinner party, it is rare to eat such a more comprehensive food in England. Ugh. There was a roar. The little wizards stood up directly and ran outside. Loud voice, quiet. A huge sound came from Dumbledore's mouth, loud and cursed. It was perfect. After he learned the true eye, he could see. At this moment, Dumbledore seemed to have become a magical black hole. No wonder he is called the most powerful white magician. And the pattern that flashed on his body should be the rules of the loud spell. Powerful, overbearing and smooth. Chapter 016. In his basic cognition, this thing exists everywhere in the universe. It is the law of the operation of the universe. Just like using physics to understand the universe, it's just that now it's from a magical perspective. It's magical. The heads of the levels took the students back to the lounge, and all the professors followed me to the basement. Gryffindors follow me, Percy shouted as he stood in front of him. Slytherins. What are you doing? Dilico saw that Anson actually looked at Quirrell, who was lying on their side. Anson spread out his hands, curious. But when he arrived at the door, he was stopped by Dilico again. This direction, not to their lounge, right? Anson didn't answer. But Dilico thought about it and followed. One told him, "You're not afraid? My mother told me to follow you more, and besides, I also want to be a good person." It is possible that Mrs. Malfoy has always been a wise person, after all, from the Black family, far from being comparable to Malfoy. Outside the women's toilet, before the two arrived, they already smelled a stench, obvious, but not the same as the smell of the toilet. And in front of them, there were two little Dowding running quietly. Look, it's Hermione's two useless men. Dilico taunted at the opportunity. Boom, boom. Boom. Several loud noises came from the front, and as they approached, the fishy smell became stronger. Oh, turning the corner, a huge monster with a club is destroying the women's bathroom, which is simply frenzied. What are we going to do? Dilico's hands were already trembling a little. The sense of oppression is too strong. Hagrid's giant bloodline is only more than 3 meters tall, but this giant is at least close to 5 meters tall, and he is still very strong. Anson. Harry looked. It was Anson and Malfoy. Harry turned around and shouted anxiously, "Think of a way, or Hermione will be beaten." Hermione was hiding under the sink on the side at the moment and yelling, which was their reaction of a normal child. Having clothes means having a certain moral outlook and social structure, and being able to use weapons shows that wisdom is not low, the body is tall, and the demon resists the unknown. If it develops intellectually, it is really a terrifying species. Merlin's little intestine. Please don't read this kind of thing, okay? Ron couldn't help it. Anson frowned slightly. Take out your wand, flotation charm. Well, there was some obscurity, and 2 seconds later, the wooden stick in the troll's hand was pulled by Anson and flew into the air away from the troll, and then thrown to the other side. The troll froze and turned sharply to look at Anson. The response is not low, and wisdom needs to be re-evaluated. So, let me see your strength. All petrified, the brows are wrinkled again, and the effect is greatly reduced. Case. The flames are roaring, falling apart, left and right separation, 10,000 bullets in unison. Apart from the crackling sound, there was only the howl of trolls. R. Ha, sneer. Even his effort was just to seriously injure the troll, and in the original play, Ron manipulated a wooden stick to stun the troll. Don't be so obvious, dang Buldo. Now this guy must be hiding on the side and watching. Phantom charm? So, there is no shadow of the gods. The crackling transparent color energy was like a blade, and the rapid blow made a popping sound on the troll. Next second, the troll looked at his body in confusion and slowly revealed blood on its skull. There was also a fatal wound with a very deep wound. Does black magic have a power for damage that is different from regular spells? The troll slammed to the ground with a muffled sound. Several small wizards around opened their mouths. Is this still a classmate in the same grade as them? This is why some professors may not be so powerful, right? Anson couldn't manage this, and walked over to the troll. Frowning, he cast a bubble head spell on himself. It's finally less smelly. Then, pulling out the scalpel again and doing the deliberation work in the stunned eyes of their little ones, the shorthand quill on one side floats on a book. These are all Anson's research notes. Record, experimental subject, troll. Humanoid, skin to demon. Double antibody is more than 3 times stronger than human. Estimates, has specific magic rules. Blood red, carbon-based life. Snap a bunch. Boom. The red-haired giant Ron swallowed his saliva and looked at Harry. Ugh, gag. Dilico couldn't help but spit acid to the side, and the other 3 seemed to have some kind of switch turned on. 2. Anson is a rare material that ignores it. Although this giant is not a rare magical creature, it is not ordinary and visible, which is of great help to him in understanding the wizarding world. For example, the kind of magic rules found on the skin of the troll. This was the first time he had discovered from Fantastic Beasts that there were also magical rules, but it was not that he had not seen other magical animals, such as the red bird that sent him the letter, Phoenix Fox. But he hadn't seen the magic rules of Phoenix Fox. Could it be that he would only see it when he was dead? Moreover, the magic rules on the trolls are gradually dissipating. Is it because of magic? Merlin's beard. What are you doing, Mr. Pendra? Professor McGonagall almost pulled out her wand as soon as she appeared. An 11-year-old wizard dismantling trolls? Moreover, how did a troll die? Clear water is like a spring. Water comes out of the sink and is ingested by the levitation spell and flies over to wash your hands. Elegance. Flitwick. Every time I see Mr. Pendra's levitation spell, I can't help but give him extra points. Ahem. Professor McGonagall prompted. What is this place? You actually want to add points? Professor Flitwick was embarrassed and stopped talking. Mr. Pendra, you still haven't answered my words. Professor McGonagall, obviously, we encountered the trolls and solved them. It's that simple. Is it really that simple? McGonagall looked over, and even though the troll had been largely dismantled by Anson, she could still vaguely see something. The flames are raging, the pieces are torn apart, the bullets are fired in unison, the left and right are separated, and one hit black magic. Hiss. Rao was her, and couldn't help but gasp. Shocked the older cat lady. Mr. Pendra, where did you learn your dark magic? This is important. Snape stepped forward. I'll explain this question to you later. Now, because of Pendra's bravery and wisdom, Slytherin adds 10 points. Of course, McGonagall, so, it looks like you need to come with me to the principal's office. Quirrell immediately said, I'll stay and fix things here. Old Bee office. Taste. This is the latest sugar from the Duke of Nourishing Seal. Old Forster Deng. He was clearly there at the beginning but did not make a move. Where did the few little ones dare to say anything? They all bowed their heads. Anson. Professor Dumbledore, I think we can finish quickly, and I hope there is still time for their night tour. McGonagall. Chapter 017. Do you still want to go on a night tour in front of the professor? What a good boy. How could Snape be a scourge? No one knew what Professor McGonagall was thinking. Of course, now everyone was more curious about why Anson was so powerful. Magic fluctuations far beyond peers. Far more spells than students in the same grade. He even did a gouge on trolls. Merlin's Cunner. It's incredible. Night tour? Ha ha ha. It's a wonderful proposal, but I hope you'll be able to go back to sleep later. After all, no one knows where there are any trolls. Dumbledore winked at a few small wizards. So, Mr. Pendra, how did you show up there? Hermione. Professor, it's my reason. I want to find trolls. I thought I could deal with it. If it wasn't for Anson coming, I guess I would have died. McGonagall was angry. You know it's okay, you're just a little wizard. How dare you? So, did Anson solve the troll? It's incredible that I wouldn't be able to do this if I were your age. Anson. Professor, weren't you there then? Everyone was stunned. Dilico pulled down Anson's magic robe and whispered, Anson, don't talk nonsense. There were only a few of us and trolls at that time. This is the greatest white wizard. At this moment, Dilico showed the pure-blood curtain strong and fearful side to the fullest. Illusion charm. Anson shrugged. Although I know where the professor is probably hiding, I can only sense a strong magic fluctuation, like the sun in the dark. Dumbledore was surprised. He and the illusion spell that he was sure he cast could not be seen by even the professors, and the entire wizarding world could see through his phantom spell no more than one slap. There will definitely be no Anson here. I'm curious, Mr. Pendra. Anson. Professor, how about letting them go back first? Little wizards need plenty of sleep. McGonagall looked at Dumbledore. Of course, Harry, your performance today is also very good. Courage and protection, always. Excellent character. Go back to sleep first. Good night. Good night, Professor. The little ones go out. A rather strange atmosphere immediately returned to the office. I call it the true eye, which can see through the essence of the operation of the spell, that is, their rules. Professor McGonagall read with a frown. Snape did the same. What do you mean? Professors, I asked you the same question at the beginning of the semester. What is the nature of magic or magic? Looking around, several people fell into deep thought. McGonagall did remember the question, and to be honest, she couldn't answer it herself. It's like being unspeakable. No one can actually describe the rules behind magic because it's in motion, not fixed. So, the so-called true eye can help you see the rules behind the magic? Dumbledore said, indifferently. Anson nodded. Not bad. And under the realize, Professor Dumbledore's magic fluctuations and the rules of the illusion spell are like a sun, which is really not too obvious. Fantastic. Yes, roused Dumbledore, and he can only say a word of magic. There has never been such a spell in the wizarding world. The knowledge of the Pendra family? Yes, Professor, this is an ancient method I got from my collection of books, and it can help me better understand magic. Listen to the blow. Professor Flitwick applauded. So, did you find anything? Anson paused and spoke his judgment and understanding. Magic exists anywhere in the universe of heaven and earth, without exception. Spells, wizards use magic to induce rule fulfillment. Rules, the laws of magic in the universe, existed at the beginning of the birth of the universe. Snape blurted out. So, from your point of view, the rules of magic are tangible? Several professors immediately became short of breath. What does this mean? It means that as long as Anson announces a tangible spell rule, the wizarding world will completely fix it, study it, and even develop it even more. Yes, Professor, it's tangible, like this. As the tip of the wand slides, a pattern is revealed in the air, which is very complicated. Different people don't use different models. Dangbredo frowned. Why? Because of the understanding of knowledge. The professor, like you, if you cast the levitation spell, its model will be simpler. This means that if we can find the simplest model, we can even pass on the optimal spell directly. McGonagall was shocked again. She seemed to see something upside down in the wizarding world. Of course, it's beautiful, isn't it? Dumbledore said, looking at the pattern circulating in the air. This is the first time he has seen this kind of thing intuitively, and he can vaguely guess what part of the principle is and what it does. Very good indeed. But for wizards like them, who are already older, there is not much appeal. On the contrary, it has a great effect on popularizing and optimizing magic. If you can write a paper about this method, even if only a few models are leaked, I believe you will definitely receive the Order of Merlin. Anson shook his head directly. Impossible. Why? Professors, knowledge is priceless, unless someone can give me a reasonable price. As for what? Medals, can I eat them? Snape narrowed. Very Slytherin. I believe you belong to Slytherin. This damn sense of superiority, damn temperament and snobbery that does not suffer losses, the little snake identified as true. That's a shame. Talk for a while, and everyone leaves. Each has its own mind. Dumbledore sat in his office, looking at Phoenix Fox. It's amazing, isn't it? The people of the Pendra family are from that kind of place. I don't know how it is over there. Tweet. Phoenix Fox echoed and exclaimed, not knowing what it meant. Dumbledore laughed. Fox didn't know how. He took off to deliver a letter. Merlin's big belly. He had never seen anything like this happen. And Fox told him afterwards that it might have gone to another world, which it couldn't understand. That's why Dumbledore didn't care much when McGonagall said that Pendra was abnormal. Snape's office. What? You want me to send Quirrell a spell? Are you crazy? Anson shook his head calmly. Professor, you still want to resurrect Lily, right? Damn maniac, get out of my office. Good night, Professor. Oh no, I should say yes. Poor Polyamorous. Chapter 018. Just arrived on the floor outside the Slytherin common room, and a few small ones were waiting. Here you guys are. Anson, are you all right? Hermione was worried. Of course, the professors were just asking about the situation. Guys, I need to rest if I'm okay. Turn around and walk into the lounge. Ron shrugged. Look, I just said he wouldn't care. Hell, we still wanted to thank him properly. He actually left. Ron. Harry shouted, and Ron stopped talking. Didn't you see that Hermione was almost about to eat someone? HMPH, if it weren't for him, we would probably be a troll poop by now. By the way, did you find out who Nick and Mailer are? Shake one's head. Look again, or shake your head. Hermione sighed. I was going to ask Anson. He goes to the library a lot and he should know. Then why don't you ask? Greetings from the trolls. Hermione glanced at him. I don't think he likes us very much, Harry blurted out. Draco sneered. Ron, what are you laughing at? Want to know why? You know, you will only cause trouble every day, and slightly say what honor. Ridiculous. Damn. Weasley, do you want a wizarding fight with me? Fried hair. We have 3 Gryffindors here. Are you sure? Ron smiled. Dilico snorted and turned to walk to the door of the lounge. He doesn't like to talk to people who aren't great. Turn around and go. Ron was stunned. What does he mean? Isn't Hermione good yet? Harry was a savior. Well, he was arrogant, and I suspect he had no friends. Ron. The two glared in unison, and Ron spread his hands. He was just telling the truth. What? You still want to go out? Then I will go too. Anson looked over, and his eyes were like looking at a fool. What are you going to do? I'm going on a night tour. I also go on a night tour. Follow closely. The two quietly walked out of the lounge and went straight to the room of requirement. As soon as he reached the staircase, Anson suddenly stopped. Dilico asked in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Anson smiled. "It's okay." Meow. A cat call came upstairs, and the next second Dilico turned his head. But where is Anson's figure? Anson, damn it. I wanted to turn around and leave, but who expected a huge noise around him, and he was suddenly confused. Meow. The hurried cat barking was closer, and there was only one cat in the entire castle that would come out at this time, Lady Loris. And there must be someone behind it. Filch. Damn it. Look who I caught, a little wizard on a night tour. Filch bared a mouthful of teeth, and Lady Loris crouched on the ground as if watching her prey. Reaching out and holding the magic robe behind Dilico. Go. Follow me to see the professor. I think you should be very fulfilling tonight. Damn, Filch, my father is a governor of Hogwarts. You let me go. Hey. When the two left, Anson revealed his figure. Have a good night. Responsive to everything in the house. It took almost an hour for Anson to portray the kind of rules he found in a troll on a mouse. If this works, the mouse will receive a kind of physical reinforcement. But, frowning. Is it because this is just an ordinary mouse with no magic support? Get out of the house of requirement. Professor? Dangredo looked at him with a smile. It seems that you are really swimming at night. What is this place? There is a house of requirements. Very honest. Dangredo shrugged. It's amazing. I also looked for it at the beginning, but I didn't find it. Anson would not doubt that if Dumbledore found this place, he would have found the Ravenclaw crown inside. The truth is that he really didn't. So Professor, you are? Dangredo's voice became more solemn. Are you experimenting? Yes, I wanted to portray a rule on animals, but failed. Oh? Why? I guess it's because the animals I'm portraying are just ordinary animals and don't have their magic power to support this rule. Understood. You want to go to the Forbidden Forest now? Winked at Anson. Anson felt embarrassed as if he had been caught doing something bad. Rhetorical question. Professor, are you going? Of course, if you don't mind me disturbing you. After all, this is really incredible for the wizarding world to miss, isn't it? Indeed. The two left the school and went straight to the Forbidden Forest. Dangbree beckoned to grab an 8-eyed spider and teased, I hope you don't tell Hagrid that. These spiders are almost equivalent to his rays. Well, then he should be rich. The venom of the 8-eyed spider is sold by the ounce on the black market outside, and it is also priceless, which is very precious. And how many 8-eyed spiders are in the Forbidden Forest? It is said that no one knows. Anyway, the number is very large. Undoubtedly, this spider fits the experimental subjects well for what Anson wants to do. As it is, fixed, portrayed. Another hour. The moment he finished, Dangredo pulled off a few of his beards. Aunt Merlin, its defenses have been strengthened, haven't they? Although he did not have Anson's true eye and could not intuitively see the specific changes of the modified 8-eyed spider, he could sense that it seemed to become stronger. The most obvious thing is that the magic fluctuations of this 8-eyed spider have changed. Yes, Professor, this kind of rule I got from the troll, and it should correspond to strengthening their skin defenses, or strengthening the body. He was excited. If this plan works, it means that he can improve his physical strength. As for the spiritual or soul aspect, it can only be studied slowly. Trolls? Yes, but it should be seen after death, and it is very short. Dumbledore, I don't think Newt will like you. Anson laughed. Newt, the master of fantastic animals, who has an affinity for animals, has adopted and rescued many magical animals. And if Anson wants other magic rules, I'm afraid he will have to kill some magical animals. They really won't deal with it. Pulling out his wand, accept your weapons. Syllable. The light hit the 8-eyed spider, only repelling for a distance, but no wounds appeared where it hit. Indeed, the defenses of the 8-eyed spider are enhanced. Under his true eyes, the magic rules obtained from the trolls are urged by the magic power of their 8-eyed spider little by little, strengthening his body. Professor, can you build a cell here? It will probably have to be observed for some time. Of course, Dumbledore said solemnly, but Mr. Pendra, please promise not to try to use it on people easily. I understand. Professor Dumbledore. Chapter 019. Christmas. With a rare week of vacation, Hogwarts has also quieted down, and a large number of students have returned home, stayed on campus, and traveled. Mr. Spencer, it seems that you are well prepared. After reading the plan in front of him, Anson said that there was nothing else written in this plan, And he didn't still have a family vault in Gringotts. A large number of ancient gold gallons can only eat ashes when placed inside. So Spencer hit his attention on this thing, just as he had thought at the beginning. The Wizarding World's financial system was extremely primitive and extremely insecure, and it was easy to pry. Anson said with a smile, "Mr. Spencer, have you ever thought about such a problem? Once their plan is completely successful, I am afraid that a loaf of bread in the Wizarding World will be more than 500,000. Spencer smiled silently. "Young master, the Wizarding World has not fallen to the list of AT students. They need to improve. They should thank us. It's not easy. But no matter what, nothing is lost for us. Let's do it." So, here are some interesting questions to talk about. How many gold gallons a month? As a professor at Hogwarts, it wasn't stated, and Anson didn't know. But he knew that the elves in the academy paid 10 gold gallons a week, about 40 a month, referring to the sixth part of Professor Horace, who still wanted to take venom to sell after the death of the eight-eyed giant spider. The salary of a Hogwarts professor probably does not exceed 300 gold gallons, and some are even lower. Of course, these professors didn't come here to work for these salaries, such as Snape, their professor of potions, who is a potions master. The potions made are basically priceless. For example, herbalist Pomona, such as Hagrid, etc. Almost all have a large number of other sources of income. But from here, you can basically see the economic level of the Wizarding World. In addition, it is worth noting that because of the existence of a noseless and faceless man, the safety of the British wizarding community has been questioned by the public. Need a sense of security, so the monthly salary of the thugs recruited by the Ministry of Magic reached a staggering 700 gold gallons. I believe that such a high-tech may not have many copies in the entire Wizarding World. After all, it is playing with life. It is equivalent to saying that a hitter has worked for a year, and he can earn one for it. A little more pay than the ancient gold gallon. Gringotts, followed by wizards recruited by Spencer, and even some werewolves in it, as a deterrent component. What? Mr. Pendra is willing to exchange ancient gold gallons for modern gold gallons? The goblin pulled his mouth wide and said exaggeratedly. The entire Gringotts hall was quiet. Anson was able to read something called greed in the eyes of those goblins. Very good. I am afraid that you are not greedy. Of course, sir. After all, I can't always use the ancient gold gallon to buy things, you know. It's a bit big. It's also worth a lot. Lewin rubbed his hands. Sorry, I'm afraid I need to explain to the side. It's not up to me. There is law. Several people were taken to the reception room in Gringotts and waited. A smile kept on Spencer's lips. The same goes for Anson. For a long time, a group of goblins walked in. Even the goblins who were supposed to discriminate against Spencer did nothing, but were extremely enthusiastic. Guys, I doubt that one of the ancient gold gallons you quoted is only worth 6,677 modern gold gallons. You know very well that I am the only one in the entire Wizarding World who has them. Here, Goblin, Mr. Pendra, this is true, but as far as I know, the number of ancient gold gallons in your hands is extremely large, and once it appears in large quantities, it will depreciate. Of course, I thought about it, but the core is not its purchasing power at all. But it itself isn't it? Anson said quietly. The most valuable thing about the ancient gold gallon is not its purchasing power, or rather, because its crafting materials give it strong purchasing power. In fact, the reason why the goblins want to buy the ancient gold gallon is also because of this. They needed to refine the ancient gold gallon, and the materials inside could be worth more than 6,677 gold gallon after being sold. The leprechaun was a little embarrassed. Anson's words made him feel a little uncomfortable, and in this way, their earnings would be compressed. However, the attraction of the ancient gold gallon is really that they cannot refuse. So, how much does Mr. Pendra need to exchange? All. How much is it all? Anson himself couldn't verify it, and Gringotts sent a lot of goblins down to Vault 13 that day to get some gold coins. Except for some left for collection, all were exchanged with Gringotts for modern gold gallons. It's no different to look at the outside, but the materials are not the same at all. He had asked Professor Flitwick at the school why the ancient gallons were so valuable. Professor Flitwick's claim is that an extinct material was added to this ancient gallon, and this material was the key core of making a potion. How many are there? The pull ring has already blossomed with a smile. This exchange is handled by him, and their reward he can get will not be less when the time comes. Dear Mr. Pendra, it has been ordered. There are a total of 500,000 ancient gold gallons. 500,000 pieces? Except for this, the rest is gold or something. Spencer and Anson looked at each other. King Arthur's wealth was still huge. In addition, there are various precious materials and books, which have been put in the ring by him and are now removed. Very good. So, it's almost a modern gold gallon that can be exchanged for more than 3.33 billion, right? Drawing his head bowed, he flattered. Yes, Mr. Pendra, you are wise. But you have that many modern gold gallons? There is no doubt about our abilities, sir. We will gather what we need soon, probably a few hours. It's worth looking forward to. Return to the lounge. Young master, I'm afraid they will transfer all Gringotts mobile gold gallons. Moreover, they may need to issue a lot more gold gallons. Yes, the wizarding world says big is not big, say small is not small. But the volume is definitely not comparable to the world of ordinary people, and the temporary transfer of more than 3.3 billion gold gallons should have reached the limit of Gringotts. In comparison, the Malfoy family is good at trend inflammation, the family is prosperous, and it has been used by Voldemort for so long but has not yet lost. Spencer had estimated that the Malfoys' gold gallons would not exceed 100 million. Once the exchange is completed, Anson's worth is directly dozens of times more than that of their Malfoy family. Tut. If all these golden gallons flow into the market at once, I don't know how the wizards will respond. It is foreseeable that once such a large amount of gold gallons flows into the wizarding market, it will definitely cause inflation. Purchasing power deteriorates and prices rise. Strangely, he was somewhat expecting that a fallen art student would appear, or a fallen Azkaban fellow. Chapter 020. The half-daytime Juan said, more than one day. It wasn't until the next day that Pulring informed Anson to go for the trade, but for Anson and Spencer, the situation seemed even better. It shows that Gringotts has reached the bottom line. Very good for their plans. If an external force wants to enter a monopoly industry, it is the most direct and optimal way to break the old system first. What a shit 28 pureblood family, it will disappear after today. However, it may be difficult for these golden gallons alone to pry the wizarding community around the world, but if it is only the British region, there is no problem. Mr. Pendra, what are your plans for exchanging 500,000 ancient gallons for 3.3 billion modern galleons? Have you ever thought about using it to benefit the wizarding world? Anson glanced at him. Umbridge? That's the little beetle, right? Spencer nodded at Anson, and immediately understood. Ah, his own people. Of course, the Pendra family has a long heritage. I inherited everything from the family. Naturally, I hope to be able to repay the wizarding world. Starting today, I will use this money to give back to the wizarding world vigorously. Create a new wizarding world for everyone. Bala. Umbridge is professional. Well, at least in tongue chewing and scribbling, she resonates well with wizards and pulls up eyes. One so time. The wizards around seemed to see that tomorrow, the rich man of his, would give away a lot of golden gallons, which was really a little cute. Of course, Anson's behavior is indeed sending gold gallons. Potion material, by Fantastic Beasts, by One Material, by Alchemical Materials, by Wizardist 8, by in all industries involving wizards, there is Anson squandering the gold gallon. There is a singing contrarian indication. Be wary, such an act must not be simple. Every move of pure blood is fatal to ordinary wizards. Some people are also saying, the glory of the Pendra family, reappearing in the wizarding world. But more talking about, people are stupid and have a lot of money. A large number of material suppliers approached Spencer, even if they signed the unbreakable oath. The Pendra family bought a large building in Diagon Alley, which gathered all the properties, and it was said that all the magical supplies could be bought here in the future. These materials and magic items were bought at high prices, and it is hard to imagine how sensational it would be when it opened. Even some second-tier dealers are thinking that when the time comes, they will come here to buy materials and sell them to the Pendra family at a high price. Very witty. But now more people are trying to sell things to the Pendra family. Take the 3.3 billion gold gallons in his hands. This is simply King Arthur's life, sending warmth. Spencer, young master, don't they have books on economics? But if you have a little brain, it is estimated that it will react, right? Anson is also very confused. Wizards, still too conservative. The consequences of not communicating with the outside world have come without knowing it. How many gold gallons have we consumed so far? Spencer took the book. 300 million gold galleons. Tut. Continue to increase procurement efforts, and especially for material channels outside the UK. All those who have signed an unbreakable oath will be given priority to buy what they have. Especially after signing the oath, it will inevitably confirm their follow-up cooperation with the Pendra family business. At that time, they will have all the material channels in the UK and beyond, so the local industry will undoubtedly be affected by them. By the way, continue to recruit personnel. You must defend the warehouse well, and the key to success lies in them. I understand, young master. A large number of gold gallons were scattered into the wizarding world. In addition to the large number of people reveling, the wizards at the bottom had already sensed something. Before they know it, it has become expensive for them to buy things now. Magical. The Weasley household. Molly and Weasley looked at it with a copy of the Daily Prophet. Their brows furrowed. What's wrong? Take a look. Handed to her husband Arthur the newspaper. The moving pattern on it was exactly the image of the Daily Prophet interviewing Anson, and the headline was very eye-catching. The heir of the Pendra family threw 3.3 billion gold gallons and threatened to spend it all. It's really funny, they even collect some magic items and alchemy items. Molly, today I went to buy something. The price has increased by 10 nats than usual. It is very common. Arthur was unimpressed. Maybe it's caused by a lack of materials, and it'll be fine after a while. I hope. Molly was clearly more worried than her husband. On the other side, The Malfoys. What is he going to do? If I'm not mistaken, this mysterious heir of the Pendra family is still a friend of Dilico, right? Narcissa. Yes, I also suggested that Dilico move around with him more. How? Is there a problem? Lucius shook his head. Maybe I'm thinking too much. A kid who doesn't know where to appear, suddenly holds a huge fortune. Really, it is enviable. Narcissa raised an eyebrow. You'd better not make other moves. I've heard Dilico say that this Anson and Pendra are very much concerned by Professor Dumbledore. Lucius frowned. Really? Well, Snape also said this, and he advised us not to have any conflicts with the people of Pendra. Oh, that's interesting. Just because he doesn't move doesn't mean others don't move. There is never a shortage of desperate madmen in the wizarding world. By the way, the head of the family industry said that there are some fluctuations. You have to go and see. Okay, I'll take a look later. If Diagon Alley entered the book as of Anson's big purchase, then Overturned Alley is already considered the new year. A large number of items and black market materials were bought out directly by the Pendra family, so that everyone knows a little. Sell things, look for the property of the Pendra family. Not to mention the high price, it is also very sweet. Where is the intimate lending? But it's not called here, it's called Love Fund, which can be financed by mortgaged property, with the Pendra family. Of course, the premise is to sign a magic contract. Even because of this, the Ministry of Magic also endorsed the Pendra family, and as a result, they needed to donate some gold gallons to the Ministry of Magic. What the hell do you want to do? Dumbledore sat in his office and spoke. Throwing money on a lot is equivalent to making people stupid and having more money. Is that really the case? But slowly, someone began to realize that something was wrong. Materials are becoming more and more difficult to collect, and potions are basically out of rack, which simply cannot meet the needs of wizards. Not only that, materials, food, potion materials, alchemy materials, magical beasts, and even dragon materials. Almost all are extremely difficult to buy. But the weirder part is not this. It's the gold gallons in their hands, as if it's not worth much anymore. In the past, it only cost 16 to buy an ounce of dragon liver. But now it costs 1 gallon and 1 Psycho. Don't look at it, it just rose by 2 Psycho. But what is behind it is not so simple. Chapter 021. Immediately after, the materials produced by a series of dragons, such as dragon heartstrings, dragon liver, dragon blood, dragon milk, dragon claws, dragon horns, and dragon skin, were basically contracted by the Pendra family. After all, most of the people who had the dragon field were 28 pureblood families, and it was difficult for them to refuse in the face of the high price offered by the Pendra family. They have signed magic contracts for exclusive purchases. There was even a partial transfer of the dragon field. An embarrassing scene appeared, and a large number of products made of these materials on the market began to reduce production due to unknown factors. Some people will say, if you don't use it, don't use it, endure it and it will pass. People who own dragon farms also think so, but unfortunately, a large number of adult dragons have been slaughtered or signed purchase agreements and cannot be sold to others. But it will take a long time for the little dragon to grow. During this period, what about potions that can only be made from the materials of the dragon used? So someone approached the Pendra Mall that the Pendra family bought in Diagon Alley to inquire. The answer was that it would be open for purchase after the mall was set up. People breathed a sigh of relief. This time, it's time for when they go bankrupt. That's an afterword. How much has it cost now? About 500 million gold galleons. Speed up. Prices in the wizarding world have begun to increase, and we need to break their deadlock in the wizarding world at a faster speed. Young master, at present, the local material industry has been controlled by us by more than 50%, and we can basically achieve our goals. Not enough, far from enough. Gringotts and the Ministry of Magic will not think of countermeasures, and even this amount is not enough to destroy the basic system of the wizarding world. The bread has not risen to 500,000, how can there be an art student who has fallen off the list? Do you have any income from raising large magical animals? Several dragon farms have been purchased, all of which are responsible for trading with the local market, and other magical animal breeding parks in various places have also established and cooperated. Anson, try to buy it. Everything will wait for the final blow. What to wait for? Wait for the time when prices really rise. Wait for the time when the gold gallon continues to depreciate to a certain extent. At this time, even if Gringotts remanufactured Jingalion enters the market, it is difficult for Jingallon's purchasing power to recover. Who made the wizarding world a small world? Its ability to withstand financial shocks is simply miserable. Once the materials they collect now are released at a lower price, those who originally thought that they had a family base with materials will be the same as those who hold gold gallons. Also taste the beauty of devaluation. Someone said, you have been burning money and losing money all the time. What good do you have? Well, this is much more beneficial. Real estate, channels, new resource monopoly identities, wizard populations, etc., etc. It can be said that as long as Spencer's plan succeeds, the native wizarding world will be completely reshuffled. Some people have said that the industry controlled by the pureblood family is not the same as not using galleons, and you don't need your materials. The problem is that the material channel is here in Anson, and as for the galleon, it continues to depreciate anyway, and you love to use it. At that time, what you sell I will sell, and it will be cheaper than yours. How long can you last? Even if I have something to sell, but you don't have enough materials to make goods, at that time, your cost is still higher than mine, so how can you fight? Once you can't compete with it, you have to exit the market. I'll raise the price. Hit the local financial system again. And when you reach the lowest point, you will see a single company. At that time, the local wizarding world will basically be able to let Anson take and seize the state. To put it bluntly, it is just to hit the market with a huge volume, 3.3 billion, enough to pry the local wizarding community. Once the resources of the local wizarding community are integrated, he could even try to empty wizard markets elsewhere. Give you sweetness and harvest again. Wonderful and simple capital manipulation, but someone will always be fooled. The holidays are over. On the way back, Hermione frowned and looked at the newspaper. Anson, what are you trying to do? What do you think? Anson held the magic book in one hand and read it, while nonchalantly answering Miss Beaver's words. You want to break the financial stability of the wizarding world? This is not good for you. I am afraid that you will lose more gold gallons. And. The small mouth opens wide. Anson put down the book. Obviously, there must be interests in this. You grew up in the Mole world. You should be familiar with these. I can think of part of it, but she's just an 11-year-old girl. You can think that when most of the wizarding world goes bankrupt, I will stop. Why? Very puzzled. Fun, huh? Playful? The few little wizards sitting next to them all felt stunned, especially Delico. Spending so much gold gallons, just for fun? Neville, now a loaf of bread has risen to 10c, Merlin's booges. It's crazy. Got off the train. Some people in the school saw that Anson was already a little hostile, but because Anson was able to control the strength of a large number of classmates at once, not many people dared to make a move. But you are Anson? That heir of the Pendra family. Suddenly a group of people stood in front of Anson, looking up. Well, Senior, Anson is not averse to the school style that supports student opposition, and the wizarding world is not a fairy tale. There are fights and guilds. The original intention was nothing more than to let the various academies compete and cultivate the mentality of wizards. There are disadvantages, but there are advantages. You are? Delico whispered. Marcus, Flint, the Flint family, their family's business is about flying broomsticks. Ah, this way. Something? The careless, uncaring attitude made Marcus uncomfortable for a while, since he became their Slyther and Quidditch captain. Few people dare to do this to him anymore. You're except for your weapons, he said. Boom. With a loud bang, Marcus flew back upside down and knocked down several small wizards. No one in the entire lounge dared to say a word, and neither did the senior classmen. After all, it was not good for them to go against Anson. There is quite kind of when Anson bullied him today, they did not open their mouths. When Anson bullied him tomorrow, no one spoke. Probably this taste. However, when Anson walked to the door of the lounge, he turned his head and said this. Wait for bankruptcy, you guys. People have different minds. Bankruptcy, a very new word, at least for the wizarding world. But for no reason, it gave these little wizards of most pure blood origins a very dangerous feeling. In the headmaster's room, Professor McGonagall was meowing. Recently, the use of schools has increased a lot. Even the purchase of food has increased by at least 30%. Dumbledore, we should take action. Dumbledore spread out his hands. What should I say? Say, Anson, you should stop your behavior. In what capacity do I ask him? You know, that's 3.3 billion gold gallons. Minerva, no one in the entire wizarding world has enough value to let Anson stop. Number. Professor McGonagall worried, but we can only watch. This is school, Minerva. Those things are not our concerns. Chapter 022. For this reason, Old Deng still called Anson over. Although he didn't know why, in what capacity, and for what purpose, he still wanted to ask. Anson, what's the point of doing that? There was a hint of caution on the old man's face. Professor Dumbledore, after this incident, what do you think will change in the wizarding world? Old Dun paused. Yes, it will change. Yes, and self-transformation. They will recognize the dangers of this financial instrument, and how to protect their interests and future. In a sense, the wizarding world should thank me, even though they don't realize it. Change? Looking at Anson, at this moment, he thought of his old friend. I still can't understand, Anson, forgiving an old man who really can't accept new things too much. How can he do it? Anson looked up. Professor, how do you mean that the wizarding world will change? Simply put, it's just to increase my potential to be risk-resistant. Professor, I wouldn't even be able to do this in the Mole world. It's too small to leverage the Mole economy, and even the operations we've laid out are too rough, and the slightest movement in the market will be noticed. Speaking of this, Anson spread out his hands and laughed. Obviously, the wizarding world does not have such a keen eye. The wizarding world is too old. Too old. Professor, anyone who picks a Mole world will know what I want to do. Merlin, it's crazy. If you follow your plan, What will become of the wizarding world in the end? Professor, if I could even turn Hogwarts into my estate. Do you understand? The portraits of successive principals in the principal's office became fragrant when they heard this. It is nothing more than that Hogwarts cannot be sold. It is not allowed. But, who can tell? What makes Hogwarts special is that it is a self-reliant teaching location, although it relies on financial support from the Ministry of Magic. But it has its own sources of funding. Relatively independent. But it is not completely separated from the wizarding world, as long as it is linked to their existence of the wizarding world. Anson's capital means can be operated. At least it will not be too difficult to enter the status of the school director. Anson left, and Dumbledore sat in silence in the office. On the tower, Severus, what do you say he's doing? Snape kept a calm face and looked like he didn't care about himself. Anyway, he can make potions to sell at any time. Well, he has materials in stock, and how their price increases outside has little to do with him. Snape said faintly, you're scared. Dumbledore looked at the castle in the dark. Perhaps, who is not afraid, a shallow means in Anson's mouth, but able to pry the stability of their wizarding world. Such a person is much more terrifying than Voldemort. It's just that Anson basically came in the open. You can't deal with it yet, do it? Because of Anson's relationship with him, he overnight asked someone to bring back a book from the Mole world, called Principles of Economics. This look, indeed, it's scary. The Ministry of Magic, especially the native Ministry of Magic, is too dependent on the so-called wizarding families, and most of the magic regulations are basically set up for these people. Ironically, however, there aren't many of Anson's tactics. Even if he knew something now, he couldn't save the wizarding world. It is inevitable that the gold galleon will continue to depreciate, and prices will continue to rise, and when the two are combined, people's needs will not be met. Chaos was created. This bureau already decided the outcome from the very beginning. It must be the final end of Anson's harvesting of the wizarding world, when the entire wizarding world will only be left with chicken feathers. Without exception. Inflation? The word is really magic. Aren't you afraid, Severus? You seem to have made some deal with him. Snape, afraid? I long for even a glimmer of hope more than despair. Don't be afraid of Dumbledore. The first to be destroyed should be the purer blood family, and then the wizarding world. And when he finishes shuffling, everything will return to normal. Is this really the case? Who should count the losses and what happened? Anson, people are just normal economic operations. Ministry of Magic? They don't expect this group of people. Maybe in the end the Ministry of Magic will fall under Anson's command. It doesn't matter anything, just want a better life. So who is at fault in this war without gunsmoke? The next day, class ended. Coming to the cell on the edge of the Forbidden Forest, under the perspective of the true eye, the eight-eyed giant spider has completely changed. The body size has increased, the body surface defense has increased, and it is obviously able to withstand more magic blows that ordinary eight-eyed giant spiders cannot withstand. That means that his experiment was successful. Record. A shorthand quill on the side awaits. The eight-eyed giant spider's defense has been increased by 3 times, and the magic resistance has been relatively improved, depending on the total amount of mana of the experimental body itself. No intelligence improvement, and no other performance. Just put away the quill pen, and suddenly Dumbledore came. Professor Anson. After saying hello, the two carefully watched the performance of the eight-eyed giant spider, especially after some of it had been undone by Anson. More intuitive. It's amazing, isn't it? Yes, magic has always been full of magic. What do you want to tell me? Seeing Anson's expression of wanting to speak, Dumbledore asked. There are some things, but I don't know if it can be done. Anyway, I hope I can help you. Of course, Professor, I'll let you know if I need help, but I may need to take some time off, maybe a week. For your so-called economic means? Anson shook his head directly. Of course not, number. Anson left school, and no one knew why he left, but news about him spread around the school. For example, a loaf of bread has now risen to an outrageous level of 3 gold gallons. Some ordinary wizarding families have begun to eat only the food they grow, and although it does not have much impact, it is secretly equivalent to cutting all the results of their previous efforts. For example, the hard-earned gold gallon is not worth much. It is equivalent to a wasted effort. For pureblood families, it is more intuitive. They seem to be getting closer to ordinary wizards. A manor on the side of Hogsmeade Village. It was bought by Spencer and used as the residence of the Pendrath family in the wizarding world. In the secret room, a group of wizards with wands in hand waited. So, let's get started. Everyone held wands and pointed at a crown in the center, which was very beautiful, and if you looked closely, you could see a string of words on it. Above, the superior Nico is the greatest treasure of mankind, aka Ravenclaw's golden crown. Avada nibbles on big melons. Dozens of green rays of light were fired at the crown in unison, sizzling. Anson raised his hand, and the wizards stopped. Young master, there is a reaction, but the crown is protected by powerful black magic, and I am afraid it will take a long time to destroy the things inside. Well, Go ahead. Chapter 023. For several days, the wizards took turns casting the death spell on the Golden Crown. In the perspective of the true eye, the Golden Crown is divided into two parts. One is Voldemort's soul fragment, and the other is the Golden Crown itself. Compared to Voldemort's soul, the Golden Crown is much more complicated. After all, this is a magical item made by Ravenclaw himself that can increase people's wisdom. According to the previous reasoning, the commanding charm, a spell that specifically targets the soul, can have an effect on the Horcruxes. Horcruxes, scored into two parts, souls and items. The death spell cannot have an effect on items because it has no soul and is a dead thing. However, it is a real damage to the soul, although the Horcrux is protected by powerful black magic. However, I am afraid that Helbo, who invented Horcruxes, and Voldemort, who used Horcruxes, would not have thought that someone was using a group of wizards to fire a death spell on Horcruxes day and night. It's crazy. It's a number that grinds you to death. However, slowly some wizards asked the question that Ravenclaw's Golden Crown had a spell that could continuously absorb magic from nature. This is why they can't destroy the souls inside so slowly. Therefore, the method of forbidden magic needs to be used. It is a large forbidden magic array, very special and complex, provided by a recruited wizard. For this, Spencer awarded him with a lot of gold gallons. After the forbidden magic array was arranged, Ravenclaw's soul became more and more manic, but prove that their direction is not wrong. In this way, a round of 50 wizards, divided into 3 shifts, continuously unleashed the death spell on the Golden Crown. But even so, Anson still felt a little less interesting. As a last resort, Anson came up with his trick and summoned the Professor. Snape, Ravenclaw's Golden Crown? Legend has it that this thing has disappeared. But I didn't expect to be found by you. So, you came to me? Try using the death spell on it. Well? Snape looked at him incredulously. Use a death spell on an item? Yes, Professor, you heard me right. Skeptical. However, when he actually hit the Golden Crown with the death spell, a scene that terrified him appeared. Wow! A roar. The black shadow rose up like a demon, and Snape was very familiar with this thing. Once upon a time he angrily joined Voldemort's army after his sister was robbed. Volume, Earth, Demon. Word by word. In response to his horror and surprise, the wizards around him were much calmer, although Anson was a little scared when he told them that this was Voldemort. But after a few days of casting the death spell, this legendary Dark Lord seemed to be like that. Fear, because of the unknown, will disappear. Horcruxes? Snape's face turned pale, and he reacted. Only Horcruxes would behave like this, and thinking of Dumbledore's strange behavior recently, he obviously knew that Quirrell had a problem but still let him into the school. Horcruxes, he must have discovered the existence of Horcruxes. At this level, I'm afraid I can't help you either. Anson shook his head. No, I don't mean you. But Professor Dumbledore, we need help. He who claims to represent justice should help us, right? The corners of Snape's mouth twitched. It should, right? With a flick of the wand, a white deer jumped and disappeared. Don't wait a few minutes. The wizard outside the manor came in to inform him that Dumbledore had arrived. Anson led everyone out to greet. I'm sorry, Professor, I have to trouble you to come over. Dumbledore looked deeply at him, a student who always surprised him. Mr. Pendra, it doesn't matter, but I'm interested in what you found. Please. In the secret room under the manor, Dumbledore discovered the secret as soon as he saw their Golden Crown. Sure enough, it's a Horcrux. The body jerked as if it had been drained of strength, and stumbled a few steps. So, what does Mr. Pendra want me to do? Professor, please use your greatest magic power to launch a death spell at the Golden Crown. Death curse? Yes. The death-seeking spell, a spell specifically aimed at souls, is very suitable. But their protection of black magic on the Golden Crown may cause inevitable damage to the Golden Crown. Professor, try raising the wand. It is an old wand, and the material of the elderberry can be seen at a glance. Under the realize, you can even see a unique magic fluctuation on the elder wand, powerful and vast. Avada nibbles on a melon. Boom. A thick green light struck over, and a scream of whoosh came from the Golden Crown again. Dumbledore. Voldemort's soul on the Horcruxes, revived. Dumbledore ignored it, his eyes shining with coldness. Instead, it increases the output of mana. Ugh. Dumbledore, you can't kill me. You can't kill me. 3 more days. Dumbledore fell backwards and was helped by Snape, and Ravenclaw's Golden Crown regained an aura of holiness and purity. Horcruxes, gone. Anson raised his eyebrows. Sure enough. But it takes a long time to keep casting the death-seeking spell, and I am afraid that no one else can do it. It was as if Dumbledore had been drained of essence. Even the wizards recruited by the Pendra family have some of their magic exhausted and gone to street mungos to heal. Anson stepped forward and picked up the Golden Crown. Wear it straight on your head. On the Golden Crown, there is a huge gemstone shining inside, revealing a mysterious aura. As if a ray of energy washed through his body, Anson only felt that his spirit, no, it should be, said that his consciousness was much clearer than before. This thing does not increase wisdom, but concentration, or improve the wearer's intuition, as well as a part of fortunate. It's magical. Meanwhile, inside Hogwarts. Ron looked at Harry clutching his forehead and exclaimed, "What's wrong?" Harry shook his head. "I don't know why. I feel a tingling pain in my forehead." Quirrell office. He was supposed to be grading the student's paper. He trembled, the corners of his mouth rose, and the next second, a gloomy and cold breath permeated. "Damn it, who is it?" "Lord, Master, what's wrong?" "Speed up. I need more powerful magical items to restore my body." "But Lord, Master, now Dumbledore is too powerful. We must be careful." "To the Forbidden Forest." "Obey, Master." The screen goes back to Pendra Manor. Anson opened his eyes. "It's okay, you guys go and rest." The wizards left. Dumbledore pointed to the golden crown on his head. Anson smiled. "Professor, it's okay." Chapter 024. Professor Dumbledore. "Professor Snape, please have tea." Spencer Butler brought the tea, added the tea, and stood aside. "Snape, how many more Horcruxes?" "Anson, how do you know?" The two had their own questions. "Professor, please use tea." The two looked at each other, looked at Anson and didn't want to say, naturally knew that it was for benefits. "Full Slytherin, I'm starting to hate you." Snape gulped his tea. Dumbledore smiled gently, not impressed. "I need all of Professor Snape's magical notes, as well as your potion-making method, of course, transcribed, as is Professor Dumbledore's side. All the Dumbledore family collections." Raising his head, he said faintly, "Deal? Don't say I'm greedy, everything is valuable, isn't it?" "No. Greed seems to be in your place to praise you." Snape's gloomy eyes were all revealing two words. One side was disgust, the other was distress. "Dumbledore, Anson, of course, it's amazing that this ancient knowledge can be considered valuable, and of course, I hope you treat them well." "Knowledge changes a person." Anson raised an eyebrow. "Professor Dumbledore, you don't have to worry that I will be like Voldemort. After all, his pursuit is actually like that in my eyes." "So, Horcruxes, as far as I know, there are many more Horcruxes. Professor, do you believe in their power of fate?" Snape frowned. "What do you mean? Will they appear on their own?" Dumbledore blurted out. "Yes, fate is a very magical thing, isn't it? You don't have to look for it. When it should appear, it will appear in front of you." "Spencer, young master, didn't you get the two professors' books and knowledge in vain?" "What a good housekeeper." "No," Dumbledore laughed. "Mr. Pendra is giving us a chance to cooperate. Professors are so wise." The two left. Outside the manor, he looked back. "At least there are more than 100 wizards. I even saw some Death Eaters inside." "Dumbledore, can you control him?" Dumbledore shook his head. "I don't want to control anyone, Severus. Everyone has a different path. The only thing we can do is determine what we should do." "I hope you don't regret it." "Regret? Maybe. What Grindelwald would do for a great goal can be seen at a glance. It can also be seen what Voldemort would do for the sake of power and the pursuit of magic. Only this descendant of Pendra, what he wants to do is not clear to others." "What can he do for this? Give Anson a death spell?" "So what's the difference between him and Voldemort?" "How's it going?" "Spencer, young master, at present, prices in the wizarding world are still rising, and the gold gallon is depreciating faster than we thought. There are even most wizards who take out gold gallons from Gringotts to purchase supplies, or materials, which speeds up the depreciation of gold gallons." "What about the outside? Wizards elsewhere wouldn't watch the golden gallon depreciate like that, would they?" "The weird place is here, young master. Wizarding world is divided into territories, and their Ministry of Magic can only manage the British region. But Gringotts has some interest. Simply put, Gringotts is universal in the wizarding world. As a result, Gringotts pulled gold gallons from other wizarding worlds in large numbers to fill their holes in the British wizarding world, torturing other wizarding worlds like cutting flesh with a blunt knife. The Ministry of Magic in those places was not happy. Accusing and controlling Gringotts to prevent Gringotts from continuing to help Gringotts in Britain has led to the collapse of the current local financial system. Didn't save it. It's a pity that Anson was still thinking of pulling the wizarding world into the water in other places. At present, it seems that only the local one can be engaged in first." "How much is the material channel control rate?" Spencer said proudly. 80%. And there are still people who are constantly selling real estate, and some real estate, such as the production of materials, etc. They can't hold on. "How many people are unemployed?" "The local wizarding community, except for certain groups, has an unemployment rate of 60%, and we have recruited some of them, most of which are still closed. According to the calculation, these people will be completely incapacitated within 2 months." "Anson, what about communication with the Ministry of Magic?" "Donations continue. Minister Fudge is undoubtedly a shrewd Minister of Magic. Alas, he sinks into wonderful donations and doesn't care what unemployment brings." Once Pendra stopped donating, it was possible that the Ministry of Magic would not be able to pay a salary, which of course, Minister of Magic, Fudge, could not see, or deliberately did not see. "Good, keep speeding up, and besides, take care of that." "Spencer, the wizards who are currently considered to be no problem have been dispatched, and they are ready to wait." Dragonfield. Anson had arrived, and according to Spencer, the Dragonfield had been bought from the Malfoy family and was very large. "Young master, Professor Quirrell has already bought a dragon egg from us. By the way, this is Charlie, the Weasley family," Spencer said, pointing to the red-haired young man on the side. Charlie looked a little hurried. At present, the family is almost living on his salary, and even Bill's salary at Gringotts and his father's salary at the Ministry of Magic are no longer enough to meet normal family expenses. On the contrary, he, the dragon trainer who was poached by the Pendra family, has an extremely high reward. Otherwise, the Weasleys would have to live an agricultural life. Although you don't die of hunger, you definitely won't be happy. "Hello, Mr. Weasley." "Charlie." "Hello, Mr. Pendra. Please follow me. The dragon is ready." On one side, there is a dragon immobilized in a cage. Anson looked at it. It was an archipelago black dragon, nearly 10 meters long, black scales and purple eyes, and a row of bone spurs extending on its back. A pair of large black flesh wings. A proper enlarged version of the lizard, but don't underestimate the dragons in the wizarding world, even though they have been captured, bred and used by wizards. It is also far from what a wizard can deal with. "Let's do it." The wizards brought behind him immediately fired the death spell in unison, and the black dragon inevitably died in the cage after holding out for a few seconds. "Open the true eye." A rule even more complicated than the one on the trolls appeared, and he wrote it down. "Well, the rules dissipate much slower than the trolls. Is it because the total amount of mana in the dragon's body is more dealt with?" Turn your head and walk into the house built in the dragon field, and carefully recall the rules and patterns you have written down. There is a magical beauty in the complexity. The rules of the troll can make the body quality of the 8-eyed giant spider at least 3 times stronger. What if it is a dragon's? What if these rules were portrayed on people? Thinking of this, Anson was a little excited. Late, Pendra family manor. "Young master, Minister Fudge has arrived. Please." Chapter 025. Dear Mr. Pendra, it is a pleasure to meet you. Anson sat on the sofa and didn't move. Fudge looked at the blanket on the sofa. "Well, this is unicorn hair, Merlin's great beauty." "What a luxury." "Please sit." "Minister Fudge, please come here." Fudge flattered. "It's my philosophy to help every wizard, and the Ministry of Magic has always done that." "Of course, my Pendra family and the wizards under my command will always support the minister's re-election. After all, the beautiful wizarding world cannot be without your excellency, right?" Fudge almost burst into laughter. He knew very well that if he had Anson's help, re-election would be almost a certainty. "But if you want to get the support of the Pendra family, the price you need to pay is also expensive." "Like now?" "Don't know." Anson turned his head and said, "I heard that there are many death row inmates in Azkaban who have been locked up for a lifetime." "Azkaban?" Fudge said cautiously. "Mr. Pendra, that place is sensitive." "Mr. Spencer, have we lost a gold gallon?" Spencer: "Yes, young master. 100,000 gold gallons. I don't know who picked it up. I hope he can do something good with this gold gallon." Fudge was anxious. "No, Master Pendra, Azkaban is more special. Although no one will check whether the people inside are dead or not. Of course, no one cares, but if it is discovered, Spencer's strange scream. "Young master, I misremembered. It's not 100,000, it's 200,000 gold gallons." Fudge's breathing was sudden and rapid. 200,000? How many rat heads can be bought? "Ah no, it's a duck neck." "The Ministry of Magic will always be the strong backing of the Pendra family, Master Pendra." "Fine, but I don't want anything to happen." "Of course, tomorrow there will be some prisoners of Azkaban who have escaped and disappeared. May Merlin bless them." "Yes, may Merlin bless them." Toasting, clanging glasses like a smile of God, or the whisper of the devil of hell. "Young master, the person left sent some materials, and 200,000 gold gallons will also fall in his house." Next, the entire Daily Prophet reported about the escape of the prisoners of Azkaban. However, on the same day, it is said that all the newspapers reported on the Lockhart's book again. Perfect coupling. The female wizards screamed in unison, and the male wizards covered their pockets. It was even hyped up by the well-known journalist Umbridge Old Witch, with the title, "Lockhart's Return." Everyone owes him a book of gold gallons. Funny, this guy's rhythm is like a spell, and the emotions are dead. Inside the manor, there was an opera played on a sound player purchased from the Mole world. In the high-pitched tone and full of emotions, sometimes intense, sometimes gentle low music. Sounds surround the pinna. The opera La Traviata, a classic repertoire. Anson took his wand and bit by bit to draw rules on the escaped prisoner of Azkaban. "Tut." I took a sip of red wine, sour, and a little astringent. Spencer handed over the towel, and Anson wiped his hands casually. "Watch out." Spencer gave the wizards around him a look and followed Anson out. "Until the 3rd day." "Young master, all 3 experimental subjects have been improved. The largest one has been strengthened at least 5 times more. God, his body is already comparable to a giant." The wizard bowed his head and reported. "Spencer, young master, does this mean success?" "Maybe." "Have you tested it?" "Nope." "Then try it." The experimental results showed that the physical fitness of the 3 wizards was strengthened by 5 times the best, and the worst by 3 times, and the total amount of mana was also increased differently. In short, Their bodies are successfully strengthened. No sequelae have been identified. After killing several dragons of different breeds in a row, it was found that the rules after death were different for all dragons. Some are fixed reinforcement rules. Some, it seems, are in terms of flames, and it's not surprising to think that dragons can breathe fire. It follows from this that the rule that can manifest after death in the real present can only be the gift that existed during the life of the being. And the drops are random. If you kill Phoenix Fox, can you drop the rules about immortality? Forrid. That thing doesn't seem to be able to kill, except that it has a life expectancy to come. At least until now, he hadn't seen anything or something about the Phoenix being killed in that book. It's ugly. Portrayal. The need to portray the rules on the body is simply miserable. How to more effectively portray this rule on wizards has become something that Anson needs to study at present. Back to school. Compared to the hatred of him some time ago, these little wizards from purer-blooded or ordinary wizard families are currently here. It seems that I am a little afraid of him. Very good. The uproar about the impact of rising prices in the wizarding world is that little wizards from their mole world are fearless. After all, it really doesn't affect them. At least not yet. Seeing that the high-ranking and proud family classmates in the wizarding world in the past have now become like this, he was helped out by Anson. You're finally back. What's wrong, Dilico? You don't know? I heard that the three reckless men were looking for something recently, and they wanted to plot something on the third floor, but the funny thing was that they thought it was very secretive. You want to get involved? Anson said with a smile. Dilico is like an orange cat that has been with eggs, and he almost jumps his horn. Not a typo. Who said that? I'm just afraid of an accident for them. Yes, that's true. Shaking his head wasn't much interested. The Philosopher's Stone is indeed good, but it is not for him. Dumbledore will not give it to him either. Dilico saw that Anson did not respond to his words, and only then noticed the crown that Anson was wearing. So beautiful! An exclamation. Someone immediately realized what this thing was and blurted out, Ravenclaw's golden crown. Merlin's beans. Merlin, what do you say with me? I'll have to climb out and force you into a pocket. What? Isn't this thing gone? You can't be mistaken. This is Ravenclaw's golden crown. Are we mistaken? Cho, you're from Ravenclaw. Don't you think? It should. That's right. Right? Look at the string of words above. Extraordinary wisdom is the greatest treasure of mankind. Hiss, it is really the golden crown of Ravenclaw. Holy and pure magic fluctuations, wonderful alchemy settings. You can't go wrong. Amazed, even Professor Flitwick, who had heard the news, hurried to witness the reappearance of their symbol of the great Ravenclaw. Only, why would it get by a Slytherin? It's not Ravenclaw at all. SHH.